Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of the Sporting Chance podcast. While you're here, check out the sportingchancepod.com for all the flyest merch and a complete catalog of the episodes. And check out Clover Creek Canine on Facebook for performance canines bred by friend of the show, Sean O'Neill. Do yourself a favor, get a lurcher, get a special, get a truck terrier, whatever it is, you can't go wrong. And while we're at it, this podcast is brought to you by A Journey with Red Tails. Order the book by author Bob Glass at ajourneywithredtails.com. And for all of your tightest falconry equipment, check out midnightfalconry.com. And let's not forget mountainstatefalconrysupply.com for your premier East Coast falconry supply store. Let's not forget your boy, my boy, everyone's boy, Seth Roy, NorthMountainGoshawks.com for your parent-reared goshawk hunting partner for the 2025 hunting season. All right, everybody, welcome to the Sporting Chance podcast on a very somber episode. This is Aaron Kincaid.
And this is Casey Everett.
And those of you who follow Casey on social media, you may be aware of tragic loss in his life. I'm going to lead the conversation asking Casey about it. He's going to share the story as he sees fit. And shortly thereafter, we will be joined by New Jersey bear biologist Kelsey Burgess.
Former bear biologist.
Former. Maybe once a bear biologist, always a bear biologist.
Well, that's what I think. That's why we have him on, because he's it's not like he's going to forget all the info he has.
It's like me, once a inside sales specialist at Lowe's, always an inside sales specialist at Lowe's. All right. So all jokes aside, Casey, let's start from the beginning. So,
okay,
Ginger, your beloved and famous dachshund Ginger was killed by a black bear.
As I take a swig of my alcoholic beverage, yes, she was.
And, you've always told me up to this point that there's a lot of black bear in southern New York, northern New Jersey.
Yeah, it's an infestation is what I would call it. I'm like not even being dramatic. There's a different bear knocking my garbage over twice a week, all spring and summer long.
And like we had said before, the problem is not necessarily the quantity of bears so much as it is the lack of habitat that they have.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, we're going to get into it on the episode, but when I talk to people about when I'm playing, bear hunting apologist with the general public, I try to just break it down to simple math where I don't know the exact numbers on this. We're going to figure it out tonight with Kelsey, but one bear requires X amount of acres, to sustain that bear. So if you don't have enough acreage for the number of bears that have access to that acreage, then you have excess bears that start moving into neighborhoods and getting themselves into trouble. Mm-hmm. And they need to be relocated, removed, or taken during the hunting season.
Right. So, for instance, if you go somewhere like West Virginia where we bear hunted, you're probably not going to see a random bear in a random strange place.
I mean, I'm sure it happens like periodically, but not to the level that it happens here. There's no way.
Well, the lady that we rented the Airbnb from there, she told me, she sounded all excited. She was like, "Oh yeah, last year we saw a bear in the creek down the road from our house."
Yeah.
And this is in the mountains of West Virginia. But to folks living in northern New Jersey, southern New York, they have bears constantly in their yard, constantly in their trash, right?
Yep. They're denning under people's porches. They're denning next to highways. They're denning next to playgrounds, which is what I ran into last year. Flushed a big bear. It could have been the same bear because it was less than 3/4 of a mile away from where Ginger was sadly killed, and the bear looked extremely similar. I mean, it's very hard to tell, but it could have even been the same bear.
Was it large and black?
It was big and black, and it was real mean looking
and furry.
And furry, yeah.
Yeah, so that's what you're dealing with up there. That's the reality of what you're dealing with. And I recall when we talked to Teddy, she said part of the reason she moved from that area was the amount of bears and coyotes up there.
Yeah. She told that great story on that episode. If you haven't heard that episode, look for the Teddy Moritz episode, where she's 3 feet from the side of a bear's head coming out of a den with her .22 pistol pointed at its skull as she's calling her dogs off, and she's deciding whether this thing's going to come after her, go back in the den. And I remember she was very grateful to the bear that it went back in its den and didn't engage.
Right. So let's start from the beginning. Tell us what happened.
Yeah. So, been having a dry spell, as some of us go through during the hawking season. And it's usually, I act like, like in the moment, you feel like it's not. In the moment, it's like a pain in the neck and you're all pissed off. You haven't caught anything in 2 weeks or whatever. And, but if you look back at other seasons in the past, this is like right when it starts to happen, like late winter, February, all the stupid rabbits and squirrels are gone. The clever ones they know where they're going. They're only out in the open for a few seconds before they're at their hiding spot. So it really makes sense that we're having a dry spell. So I was having a dry spell and I had a terrible day on Monday. And then Tuesday, I was so like enraged that I ended up like scheduling my day super short. Like I pushed the 2 afternoon jobs to the next day so that I could just go straight hawking after what I finished in the morning. So I got out, I checked 2 spots, moved like 1 rabbit, and then got back in the truck. And then I'm just like on X looking at, locations. And I go, this spot looks good. And I hit it when I first moved to the area 3 years ago with that Karen bird, and I had no dogs with Karen. And we didn't really move anything, and I was just kind of beating it manually. And I said, forget this, and I left. But then, with Ginger and Franny, I'm like, all right, I should probably hit that spot again. There's nobody really there. This is next to this is one of the things I want to clarify is that this is not it's not like it was a farm, right? But it's next to a parking lot that on Saturdays and Fridays and Sundays is filled with probably close to 1,500 vehicles. I'm talking hundreds. I'm talking thousands of people go to this place. And I'm not going to say exactly where it was because then people will know like literally exactly where it is. And they go to this area. And so like my car was parked in the back of that parking lot and there was nobody really there. So I was in the back, I was out of the way, and it's a parking lot, huge parking lot, and probably 25 yards of trees. And then as it reaches the edge of the field, there's like some brush piles and brush. Okay. And it goes all the way up from the road, but there's really no cover by the road. So we weren't really going to go that far anyway. We didn't get that far. Then it goes back into the woods where it gets real thick and gnarly into like a swamp with the Phragmites, and there's like an old train tracks back there that's like not in use anymore, and there's good cover. So we immediately went straight in from the parking lot, cut a right towards the Phragmites, got back there, moving rabbits, no squirrels, just moving rabbits. It was real windy and cold. And then I said, okay, well, let's move back the other way now because we kind of beat that whole area out. And we start moving back the other area. But before we get to the other patch, which is kind of at the far end, maybe 85 yards from the road through that woods where there's not much cover, like I was saying, there's a huge brush pile in the middle of the field. And they burn it every year. You can almost see the smoke from my house.
When you say huge brush pile, how huge?
I estimate it to be about 30, 40 feet in diameter. Perfect circle, like almost like manicured into a perfect circle. And then it's piled high. So they pile it like with the tractors and stuff, they'll pile it. So it was probably the spot that I was standing was probably like 6 feet off of the actual ground.
So it's just a bunch of limbs.
Yeah. Tree branches, big root balls and trimmings and stuff from like shrubs and it's more of like a hay. I wouldn't really call it like a farm. It looks like a farm, but it's basically just a big field, and I guess they hay it in the summer. And there's really not much else going on there. It doesn't even look like anybody lives there, but they do burn it every year. So I immediately walked up to the brush pile. So picture a perfect circle, and you're walking directly up to the circle. Okay. Ginger and Franny are directly in front of me. They go into the brush pile. The wind is coming from my right to my left. Ginger and Franny are walking directly into the brush pile with the wind cutting across the top of them, right? Going directly through the brush pile in a straight line through the brush pile. So they start working the brush pile where we entered. I climb up on top and I start jumping up and down. There's rabbit sign all over. Like I was looking down in there. There's some leftover snow under there that didn't melt because it's, colder under there and there's no sunlight. And you could see tracks, you could see poop, chewings. And I'm getting all excited, like it's hard to even think of my mindset before the whole thing unfolded, because anybody who runs dachshunds and they go into a brush pile with a lot of sign, it's hard to describe like the feeling of excitement that you're about to have. You know what I mean? Where you're like, something's going to happen and you're pumped and, the bird's in position. There's nowhere for the rabbit to go. If it leaves that spot, it's going to be a phenomenally beautiful flight. And even if the bird misses it, it's still going to be a lot of fun to see and be part of. And you would hope that the bird would catch it. So I climb up on the top of it. I'm basically in the center of the brush pile, directly in front of where we entered the brush pile. Ginger and Franny are working. So I'm just standing in the center. So picture I'm standing in the center with the wind at my face, if that makes sense, if you were to draw it as a diagram. So the wind's at my face. Ginger and Franny are working the the edge of the brush pile around towards the front of me, meaning that they're not getting any scent from the brush pile, what's in the brush pile. They're working kind of just off of just what's right in front of them, just checking the brush pile. And I'm jumping up and down, I'm getting the dogs excited. I'm telling them to find them, this and that. And then Ginger and, they're directly in front of me towards the edge of the brush pile, maybe 6 feet in from the outside edge of the brush pile. And I mean, the only way to describe it is it's basically, it was just like an explosion from directly under my feet. I was jumping up and down on the bear's head, essentially, where I was standing. So I'm jumping up and down. So then it was basically just like this blood chilling snarl and big limbs snapping and breaking. And Franny bark. It's hard to tell from the video, but Ginger barks once or twice. And then the second bark gets cut short, with a shrill, like you could tell that something just happened.
It's like a yelp.
And then Franny barked 2 more times after that and then was dead silent. And then I immediately knew what happened. So I start, yelling. I'm just like, like yelling, trying to, get the bear out of there. 'Cause I knew exactly what happened. I've dealt with this enough since I moved here that I knew that the only thing large enough to make a noise, the noise and then the sound of it. And then as I'm like trying to catch my balance on top of this brush pile, like balancing on these limbs, I look to where the noise came from, like literally 5 feet in front of my feet, like 5 feet in front of my boots. There's just like this massive head just looking at me through the branches, just staring at me. And I like froze, and I'll post the video eventually. And Aaron saw the video, and you can, it's just like a standoff, like a standoff where like if you're editing a video, you would want to cut it out. That's how long it was, where it was like this pause. And I don't know how long it was, maybe 10 seconds, 5 seconds, but it felt like a minute, like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, is this thing just going to come up out of this brush pile and just destroy me? And I'm like, where am I going to go? Like, there's 50, 60 yards to the tree line, wide open field. I'm off balance on top of this brush pile. Like, I ain't going anywhere. And then it just starts slowly walking out of the brush pile. Franny's bark came from right in that area. So I don't know if it grabbed Franny too. I know that something just happened to Ginger. And I said it in the video out loud. I said, I hope Ginger's alive. you know, and then the bear walks out of the brush pile. There's a little trot across the field. Then I'm filming it with my phone, and then I had the GoPro on also. And in the GoPro, you can see what I described to people, but on my phone, you can't, because I'm like watching the bear, deciding whether I should like reach in my bag and like pull out my BS knife to, like, you know what I mean? Because this thing stopped at the edge of the field and turned around like it was going to come back. And I've never seen a bear do that before. So I didn't know it was about to happen. And then it kind of like stops, looking at me, not fearful at all, like looking at me like it had zero fear. Then it walks into the woods, and then it gets into and meanwhile, my goshawk is directly above its head, 10 feet above its head. It gets into the woods behind a small pine. And then as I make this sigh of relief internally, and I'm trying to figure out how to get down, it stops again. And I see the legs stop. And then I see it looking at me through the branches. And I'm like, am I gonna like fight this thing to the death right now? Like, well, I got to get to my dog. And then it just keeps walking. So then I jump down, I run around, I'm calling Ginger's name. I'm thinking she's like petrified under there, all scared. I'm yelling for her. I'm calling her. I pull out the remote for the e-collar. I put it in the sound function. It makes a beeping noise. So I start clicking that. I can hear that she's like 10, 15 feet in front of me. Meanwhile, I'm checking over my shoulder, and I have to crawl into this brush pile with a bear that wasn't too enthusiastic about getting out of the area. So it's like one of those things where it's like, like you hear a story like this and you think to yourself, like, I'll jump on its back and stab it. And like, yeah, if it came after me, maybe like my adrenaline would kick in and I would just go to town stabbing the crap out of this thing. But in that moment, it's like, I don't want to crawl into a den where there could be some young cubs, and then mama bear decides that she's not just going to leave and then comes back while I'm in there. And it's like, I'll give my life for my dog. Yeah. But at the same time, like, I don't know if she's dead or not. I don't know. I don't know if she's scared. So I'm vibrating her. And then it was very clear that she wasn't coming out. I didn't hear any noise whatsoever. So I just started crawling in there. I didn't even know where Franny was. She was no noise from her, dead silent, wind howling in my ears, birds screaming like an idiot up in the tree. And I just started crawling in there, and then crawled in. And basically, if you picture like a T, so picture a T, you're crawling in the long part of the T. And on the left side of the T, I immediately noticed the den, like a perfectly round, like it almost looked like the bear was in there with its claws, like braiding like this beautiful nest. Cause there's like a perfectly round nest that's probably like maybe 4 feet across, up on a platform directly under where I was standing, like literally directly under where I was standing. And then to my left, it's like kind of like a cavern with big limbs, maybe 6 inches in diameter, kind of crisscrossing. And I see down in there, I see the collar. She had a white e-collar on with a little, name tag, and I could see the white, and it was just laying on the ground. And then, then you can, it's all on GoPro, and you can hear me start going ballistic, trying to get her out of there. I have the knife in my hand. I only realized after the fact that as I'm reaching and bending, trying to reach my arm in there, I'm using my right hand to balance myself as I'm reaching with the knife facing straight up in the air as it's whizzing past my face. And I couldn't even reach her. I could just get the tips of my, my 2 fingers just to the tip of her ear. And I slid her out by her ear, which just felt so wrong to me. And then just got a grip on her and just pulled her up out of there. And she was dead. But as we know, as hunters and outdoorsmen, when something's dead, it doesn't always stop moving. And it's kind of, Aaron, and it's kind of similar to when you picked your red tail up and it was kind of still moving in your arms. It wasn't as much movement as the red tail, where like your emotions are like, as cliche as it sounds, it's like a roller coaster, right? Where you're thinking, I can do something, I can save this situation, there's something that I can do. And then as I'm turning around to crawl back out, And then I finally get to a point where I can stand up. And I'm still concerned about the bear. But at this point, I'm angry. So at that point, I probably would have. It's hard to say what you would have and should have done, but I was basically in shock. I thought there's something I could do, and basically I ran. It was like a little hill that it drops down to into where the brush pile is. So I went up the hill and placed her on the lip of the hill, and I think I felt for like a pulse. I started trying to see if and then I just saw the 3 giant canine punctures in her right side, right over the breadbasket, and then 2 on the left side of her body, and you could just immediately feel like all the ribs, everything was crushed. And then I knew at that point she was dead. I mean, she's flopping around in my arms as I'm trying to get out of there. I nearly stepped on Franny as I come out. She was right there under the bear's feet, smart enough to keep her mouth shut. And then I just started looking at her, and I just remember just wanting to get the collar off of her. I didn't want the collar on her. I just remember it felt so wrong that it was on her, and I took it off of her, and I wasn't like, you would think you would start crying, and I didn't have the urge to cry, and I just stared at her in like disbelief that this just happened. I must have sat there for like 15 minutes just staring at her. Franny didn't really know what was going on. She smelled her mom, and she kind of walked away. Then she disappeared. She went in the same direction as the bear and disappeared, of course. So then I'm switching the channel on the remote, and I'm trying to get her back. Birds, jumping around in the trees, catching the wind, kind of flying around. There's blood all over me, all over my bag, all over my hands. And then I guess after multiple minutes, I didn't know what else to do. I just stood up and just walked back to the truck and sat in there, and I called Teddy. And then once Teddy answered the phone and I described to her what just happened, then we both lost it, Teddy and I, and I couldn't even speak.
When someone as hard as Teddy starts crying, it's tough.
Well, that's what it was. Because you see Teddy, and she is this woman that's hard and rough and just a killer, just a hunter, just out, meat hunter, as she describes it. She's out there to get meat, and she feels no remorse for it. And then hearing her, because she'll always describe when she loses a dog that she'll cry, but hearing her on the phone, like getting choked up, like that's when it all like a wave, like washing over me, just sorrow and loss. And then the rigor mortis started kicking in. So I knew that was going to kick in. So then I didn't want her to be in the position that she was in. So I immediately started trying to adjust her so that she was in a nice position, which is weird, I guess. I guess it's weird trying to like position your dog so that she can have some dignity and not be in like some sprawled position with her mouth and stuff. And,
well, you can't predict how you're going to react in this situation.
No. And part of it is like, as you know, Aaron, and other people that are in the field, when you're in the field, it's almost like you're in work mode. I mean, I work with my hands, so that's, for most people, maybe that's not the same comparison, but when you're in work mode, it's like, you're working, next brush pile, next strip, that looks like it has rabbits in it. A rabbit could be hiding there. Hit that, boom, boom. And you're moving. And then when she got hit, I was in like reaction mode. Like, I got to get to her. I hope she's alive. Okay. Bear's out of the area. Is the bear out of the area? Do I want to go in here? Is she alive? Is she not alive? Is she alive? Looking over my shoulder. Is she alive? You know what I mean? And it's like, once like the moment was calm and Franny was kenneled up and the bird was back in the box and I was just sitting there in my car with the heat on, and then normally you'd be in a sense of relief, like dogs are safe, birds alive, it's a good day. That's when, like, instead of that relief or that satisfaction of the hunt, it was like this immense sorrow that just took over me. And I was 15 minutes from my house. I didn't go home for like 3 hours. I didn't go home for 3 hours. I just drove around. I sat there for probably an hour. Talked to you, Aaron, which was great. Talked to Teddy, talked to Phil, Paul. I just didn't want to walk into the house, because when Karen died, that hit me really hard, surprisingly hard.
For those of you who don't know, that was his Siberian Finnish goshawk from a few years ago.
Yeah, she hit a window, and I was real attached to that bird. I love that bird. And they don't love you back, obviously. And it was a mistake of mine to get that attached to that bird. And my wife said that was the first time she's ever seen me cry was when that bird died. And that was only because I didn't have any time to process, because it was New Year's Eve. We had a huge party at the house. I figured I'd get a couple hours of hawking in with friends. And then I didn't have the luxury of taking my time. I had to just go straight home. So I had to like go home. And then it was like, I was processing, in my bedroom, with guests over and trying to be nice to my family and extended family. And then after they left, then it washed over me, and then it was like real bad. So I didn't want to go home, and that I called my wife. I told my wife, and she thought I was joking. She said, she's like, no, you're joking.
What's such an outlandish thing to say? It sounds like fiction.
I still wake up in the morning. Ever since it happened about a week ago, I wake up in the morning and I think I just had a really bad dream. And it wasn't a dream.
Well, dude, I told you a million times. I told you that day when we talked, like my heart goes out to you. And even though I've lost 2 beloved birds this season, there's nothing that compares to the bond that we build with our hunting dogs.
No.
And, I'd trade 1,000 birds for one dog. I don't know if I said that right, but I think you know what I mean.
No, I know what you mean. Yeah.
So let's talk about the aftermath. You got a lot of outpouring of support.
Yeah, I got a lot of outpouring of support.
Let's talk about the support first, because there's a couple. Then after, let's talk about the people who had the opposite reaction. Yeah,
that's to be expected. I didn't, and here's the thing: is I'm going to make a video, and I'm probably going to share some of the audio of this conversation on my social media to just explain to people what happened, because everyone wants to know. Everyone wants to know, and people love Ginger, and I'm not saying this as like an ego thing. I have tried to find another working dachshund that has more engagement, and Ginger is by far the most viewed working teckle in the world on social media. There's no other dog that has gotten more views in terms of social media views and engagement than Ginger, just doing what we all do every day. She was a special dog to me. She was a standout from other dogs that I've ran. She was a super sweet dog, which made it hard.
I beg to differ.
Well, if you try to pick her up, she's not so sweet, so don't touch her. But with me,
the video of me pulling the possum out, and she's biting me.
She's biting you. Yeah. She's in the field. She's hard. At home, she's a complete mush, sweetheart. So I really I made a post just saying that, she was killed by a black bear and whatever. So people, just because you feel like I don't owe anybody necessarily an explanation or anything like that. But just because of the fact that so many people were able to see a dachshund do what they were bred to do. And, And just in honor of the breed, I felt the need to just share that she passed away and how she passed away.
Yeah, I think that's important. And
yeah,
someone in particular reached out to you, and I was so impressed by it.
Yeah. I was not expecting that. I was not expecting it, to the point where my phone for the last week has been on silent at night, because everybody gets off of work and they want to call and, you okay? What happened? Are you doing all right? Is there anything I can do for you? So my phone was on silent, and I wake up in the morning, I'm driving to work, and my cousin, who I have to call back, he called me like 5 or 6 times. He's from Arizona. He's a good guy. All my cousins are great. But my cousin Lucas really, he loved watching Ginger. And so he called me a whole bunch of times. I got to call him back. And I see under his name, I see Bobby Kennedy Jr. on my missed calls. And I go, what the heck? So then I just, it was 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm driving to work. And so I just tried to call him back like a moron, but he lives in California now. So then I I immediately hung up.
He's also in the midst of being confirmed for Health and Human Services Secretary.
Right, exactly. So I was not expecting that. And then he, I immediately hung up. I'm like, it's probably like 4 a.m. by him. So I just texted him. I said, I just didn't realize the time changed. My apologies. I just sorry I missed your call. I'll be around today. And then and I'm like in a customer's house working on their boiler, and my phone starts ringing. It's Bobby Kennedy. So I go, oh, okay, that doesn't happen every day. So I just excused myself, stepped outside, and answered the phone. And it was just like a 4-minute conversation, 5-minute conversation. Just, he just says, he just wanted to know what happened to Ginger. What happened? And, I don't know. I didn't have the wherewithal to ask him who told him. So I don't know if he's like lurking, because I don't think he follows me. But he must have realized, and he loved Ginger, because when he saw her at all the events and stuff, it's like he loves Ginger.
I doubt he uses Instagram, even though he has an account.
I don't think he's not like Don Jr., where he's like, you could tell it's Don Jr. using his own account. I think RFK probably has people that manage it for him. But so we had a nice conversation, and I don't know him super well, so I couldn't tell, but he sounded extremely upset. And he wanted to know what happened and how that happened. And if there's anything he could do. And I just said, listen, I know how busy you are right now. We're all following along. And I really appreciate you calling me. It means a really good deal to me. It means a lot to me. Thank you. And then he said, let's get out this season. And then I said, well, this season's about to come to an end in about a month and a half. So you tell me. I'm ready. Not as ready as I was 4 days ago, but I'm ready. And then I realized later that he left me a voicemail the night before. So he left me a voicemail just saying he's sorry about Ginger and to call him back or whatever, and let's get out the season. I mean, that's pretty crazy.
That's crazy for somebody in such a high profile position to take the time to reach out to a complete nobody loser like you.
Well, I mean, I just show up and fly my bird at the events. Like, I'm not like buddies with him. I mean, we text about other things. He wants a dog. So me and Aaron he wants a male for his son, a male dachshund from the same line. He's ran, I think, 2 or 3 dogs from Teddy over the years, for hawking. So he loves the breed. So we text about that, about litters and stuff like that, but not like, buddy.
Yeah.
But then after, then that night he starts texting me like pictures of him with his kids and pictures of his dachshund, and like, and I'm like, are we like friends now?
It's just so crazy, man. I think that position is he's, assuming he gets confirmed, he's like 4th or 5th in line to the presidency, I think.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Which is, the likelihood of that happening is obviously slim to none, but still, it's an extremely high profile position.
Yeah.
And for him to take the time to reach out to you, I'm just joking about you being a loser, obviously. But for him to take the time to reach out to you with everything he's got going on right now is pretty incredible. And that he earned some respect in my book for sure for that.
Yeah.
I don't care politics aside for someone that high profile to reach out to somebody that can't really do anything for them, because so many of those people are like transactional. They're only going to bother with you if you can do something for them.
Correct.
You don't really have anything to offer him.
No, not at all.
And for him to take the time to reach out to you, that's pretty awesome. But so real quick, some of the other love that you got, let's just briefly gloss over that.
Yeah, and it's a good topic to bring up, not because, and I appreciate all the outpouring of support. I also am I'm also very much aware of the not outpouring of support from people that you would expect, that saw everything and didn't have the time to say anything about it. And like I said in the beginning, I did not post it for any type, like I don't need anyone's condolences or to feel sorry. Like I don't need any of that. I did it simply because there's quite a big audience that likes Ginger and likes seeing her videos. So I felt the need that I needed to just explain what happened. And then with that being said, that also opens me up for, these psychopath. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. I mean, they're like psychopath freaks. The people that love animals, right, Aaron? They love animals so much.
Yeah.
They love animals so much. But if you're using an animal for what it was intended to be used for, you should take its dead body and throw it on the grill and eat it like you do all the rest of your animals. Now, as triggering as that to some, not to me, but as triggering as that is to some, it's really not. You know what I mean? Like if it was a life or death situation and she got killed, I would most certainly eat Ginger.
Oh boy!
And to add on top of that, the Inuits, when their sled dogs would pass away, to honor their sled dogs, they would make those big mitts for the sleds that they wear to block the cold on their hands. They would make mitts out of their fallen sled dogs. Mm-hmm. To honor their legacy.
Should have made a falconry glove out of Ginger.
I was thinking about making a little sash for like my hawking bag or something.
Yeah.
But this is probably highly illegal in the United States. But
this is a side note, and it is a very insensitive side note. But my sponsor Bob was telling me that in some countries they use dog leather for durable outdoors goods like falconry gloves. He said that he knew someone that had a dog leather falconry glove that was from Europe. Now, personally, I want no part of that, but it is interesting.
So, and the takeaway that I got from all that drama, I don't even know what you said, Aaron. I unplugged my headphones to put my jacket on.
I was saying that Bob, my sponsor Bob, was telling me that in some parts of the world, I think Europe, because I don't think this is the thing, is other parts of the world do not view dogs the way we do in America.
Correct.
In America, they're fur babies. Other parts of the world, they're just a working animal and they don't have this strong connection with them like we do. But He said that he met a guy that had a dog leather falconry glove.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'm not into that. I'm a dog lover. I just kind of have no interest in.
Yeah,
but whatever.
It's not part of our culture. But like I said, there's other cultures where, they do different things, and I don't think if I made something out of Ginger's hide, I don't think that would necessarily be disrespectful.
Yeah, we're going off the rails here with this. At the end of the day,
she's in the ground. She's buried. I had a nice burial for her. I was tempted to drag it out. I buried her the night it happened. I gave her a bath. She's a hardworking dog, so she was due for a bath. So I cleaned her up, shampooed her, conditioned her fur. Obviously, it doesn't matter, pet friendly stuff at this point. It really helped. It really helped to heal. Not so much seeing the blood all over my bathtub. But I cleaned her up. I blow dried her. I combed her out. And I wrapped her in one of Abby. She was a 19-year-old dachshund that I retired from hawking. She was an excellent dog too. She passed away last year, 19 years old. So I wrapped her in one of those blankets, and then I buried her next to Abby, who's buried on my property. And I buried her with one of Betsy, the North American goshawk, because we got 100 head last year, and most of them are rabbits, and every single one of those rabbits was because of Ginger. So I buried her with one of Betsy's molted deck feathers, a squirrel tail, and a rabbit tail. And I folded it all up nice, and I placed her on the ground, and it was very therapeutic.
You do what you got to do to heal, man. And
I don't even know what I have to do to heal, but all I know is that being out there in the cold and the dark with my headlamp on, digging that grave for Ginger by myself was very therapeutic.
So what's next?
And that's the other thing on that same note. That's another good question and another good discussion. It's a very strange dynamic that we have with our dogs, because at the end of the day, they are our pets that we love, but at the same time, they are also a tool that we use and that we rely on. And I love that. I love my dogs to death. And this whole situation is 100% traumatizing. And I am, to some degree, I am scarred from this, because I was running Franny and she went into some Phragmites in a rural area the other day, and just 2 days ago. And I just immediately started getting panicky that there was a bear in there denned up, because it was a nice quiet place where a bear could be denning. So I am definitely traumatized from this, but I definitely need another dog to continue to do what I do. And so what's next for me is my good buddy Aaron right here has a litter of puppies on the ground with a female that's not spoken for. So I think I'm gonna run a Lancaster special and give it a shot. Just kidding. Yeah, I'm excited for the puppy. I think it's gonna help. And Franny's a nervous wreck in the house. Everybody's concerned about Ginger and me, and nobody thinks of little poor Franny. And Franny's a nervous wreck. She really is. So I think another puppy to be there with her and help us kind of get back to normal and calm. And the dog's not going to replace Ginger. Ginger didn't replace Abby. Abby didn't replace Ellie. Ellie didn't replace Indy. I've had none of them replace the other one. But we need them and we use them for what they're for, and they love us for it. So,
there's no bond like the bond between a hunter and the hunting dog.
Nothing comes close, and that's not just us saying that out of our rear end.
No, it's true.
It's 100% true. Like, a dog that is bred to work, if you give it a job to do, it'll love you for it.
When we interviewed Marshall Feinberg a long time ago about ratting, he's got his Lurcher Henry.
Yeah,
his Lurcher Henry grew to absolutely love me when he figured out that I was his hunting buddy.
Yeah.
And otherwise, that's a very aloof breed of dog. But man, he loved me. When we got done hunting, he would be leaning against my leg.
Yeah,
he thought I was the shit because I would catch rats by the tail and throw them to him to eat. Well, not eat, but kill.
To kill. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because I think Aaron has that effect on dogs, because when we hunted with Kirk, and he has that Siberian Laika that's bred to like bay up grizzly bears and stuff in Russia, brown bears. Mm-hmm. That dog was all over you.
And it was after he was licking bear blood from my hands earlier in the day. Exactly.
He goes, "This guy is somebody I should hang out with because he's successful in the field. I like this guy."
I love dogs and dogs love me. What can I say?
Yeah.
But once again, man, my heart goes out to you. I hope everyone that's listening understands what transpired. We have to do this. We're compelled to do this. And Kelcey is not in an option, and he doesn't have an opportunity to hunt somewhere that's not going to have bears, because this is where he lives. And it's a reality of that area is it's just inundated with black bears. And this gentleman right here that just joined us could probably tell us a thing or two about that. Welcome.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, Kelsey, how are you?
Good.
Welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for the invite.
Of course. Listen, we are literally honored to have you on the show. We're absolutely honored to have you here.
Kelsey, early on, Kelcey told me when he talks about his falconry, getting into falconry, he said that his mom, through her Mama Sue, as we affectionately call her, Mama Sue, made sure that him and his brothers got a thorough education, and part of that was connecting with you early on. Do you remember that?
I think I might remember that. You guys, I remember your mom and you coming to the office on several occasions, and you were pretty young then, weren't you?
Yeah, I was probably 13 or 14, and while I was trying to read the questions for the falconry exam for an hour and a half, my mom made her way into your office and said, I homeschool my kids and I want to take them on a bear researching. I want them to learn. And I think you said something like, it's not really our protocol to bring children on these kind of things. And my mom's the type of person that doesn't take no for an answer. And sure enough, you're like, all right, meet us here. And we met you there. And 5 minutes down the road, you got a giant bear snared, getting ready to get tranquilized and then processed and weighed and blood samples. I mean, Kelsey, I'll never forget. I have the pictures to prove it. I'll never forget that experience of going on that with you. That was life-changing.
Well, that's awesome.
Absolutely life-changing.
I do remember you and your mom really well. That's awesome. That's cool. This is a really exciting little reunion here. Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. Full circle.
Full circle, small world. We had Brian Melvin on the show, who you were instrumental in his success in taking the record bear with a bow last year. I believe you sold him the feed, the bait that he used.
Yeah.
And listen, if I'm gonna spend money, I'm gonna spend lots of money on buying bear bait. I'm gonna buy it from the former New Jersey bear biologist. That's the guy I'm gonna buy it from. I'm pretty sure that guy knows. He's gonna know what to mix together to get that bear in range for me to put an arrow.
There might be some inside information there. Who knows?
Yeah, we were trying to get him to spill the beans or to spill the grains on what's in there, but he said it's proprietary. And I said, okay, where'd you get it? And he said, Kelsey. I said, Kelsey, I know that name, Kelsey. And then I said, you got to send me his number if you don't mind. Ask him if it's okay. We'd love to get him on the show. And here we are.
Cool.
You've come up twice on this podcast we're going on a year. So you've come up twice in just a year.
Wow.
Yeah. Podcast is exploding.
I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Kelsey, with you, it's always a good thing.
Okay, good.
It's always a good thing. It's always a good thing. And we didn't really have a preamble. Me and Aaron, before you just jumped on, I just told the detailed version of what happened to my dog about a week ago, getting killed by a black bear.
Mm-hmm.
Bear was denned up in a brush pile. Rabbits are in brush piles. Dachshunds go into brush piles to flush the rabbits out for the hawk to catch. And she went in the wrong brush pile. And she's done that. That has happened. And this is not a dog. This is the other thing, Aaron, that we didn't really discuss in our conversation previous. Ginger didn't know the bear was there. She had zero clue the bear was there. Yeah. She was upwind on the outside edge of the brush pile with the wind blowing into the brush pile with the bear almost in the direct center of the brush pile. So the first noise that she made was like a bark and a half and the bear was already on her and she was dead. And I just think, and it's weird, Kelsey, because maybe you can, Aaron's a counselor by trade. He works at a school. He counsels children. And this was a little bit of a traumatic situation for me. And I think with you here, and bears have come up nonstop on the show. We've had tons of bear hunters on the show. We're pro bear hunting. We're pro bears. We love bears. You love bears, I would imagine. Mm-hmm. And I think that this conversation is going to be therapeutic for me to just move past this. So saying all that, I just wanted to say that, so Ginger has flushed 2 or 3 bears in the last, we moved here 3.5 years ago, and she flushed 2 bears out of brush piles last year. And when I say flushed, I mean, she's looking for rabbits. I'm beating the outside edge of the brush pile, and then there's just an explosion and a bear's running out of the brush pile. And I'm like, crap. In the bear's defense, I'm not necessarily mad at the bear for what happened.
Right.
When I crawled into that brush pile, that den was in a perfect little cavern the bear made, and it had nowhere to go but past Ginger. And Ginger wasn't baying it. She wasn't harassing it. It was either, I think it was just one of those things where, the animal was cornered. There's a little dog that it's, and I was jumping up and down in the brush pile. I think the bear was agitated. I didn't hear one single noise, although the wind was whipping that day. And I think it just decided to take out its frustration on the little tiny dog that was in front of it. Can't really blame the bear. So let's talk about you, Kelsey. Where do you want to start?
Just listening to your story there, I guess if I were to give a little bit of advice on that, it would be that that's not, unfortunately, that's not unusual. Okay. That's happened several times over my career working with bears. We've had, beagles get killed before that were out there running around doing the exact same thing you were doing with your dachshund. So if there's anything to take from this, is it's an unfortunate mishap. Just the wrong place, wrong time. Conditions are perfect, and bad things happen. It's just unfortunate. Certainly, it's not the dog's fault, not your fault. Certainly, the bear's just protecting itself. Probably, I don't know. Did it have cubs at the time, or was it solo?
I have. So one bear we flushed, she had one cub, real small sow, 150 pounds max, just denting in the edge of a rabbit field. And the dogs are barking at something. We thought it was a raccoon. All of a sudden, this smaller bear just blows out of there. And then as we're gathering the dogs up, we start hearing this whining noise, and we circle around, and I kind of bent down and looked in there, and there's like a cub, like this big, wiggling around in the dirt.
Yep.
And I go, you got to be kidding me. And I called the dog, and then like I said, we're hunters, we're outdoorsmen, we love bears. I don't want to, so we're like, we got to get out of here. Let's get the dog there. We left, and then we were like hoping that the female went back. I guess you would know more than any of us if she would go back. Would she go back?
Yeah. Generally, they go back.
Okay.
In fact, that's one of a few techniques. Like when we do den work, what you'll do is sometimes you can't get into the female bear to, tranquilize her while she's actually on the nest. And sometimes it's necessary to bump her a little bit and get her to move a little bit so you can get a dart into her. Generally, as a general rule, not always, but typically older females are the ones that sit tight. They're going to be very, very defensive. Generally, younger females are the ones that take off. They don't have as much of an affinity for their cubs as, say, an older sow does.
Yeah.
So when you have a bear that blows out of a bear den, that's generally a younger animal, younger sow. Let's say first, second, third set of cubs that she's had. Probably the animal that your dog, had the experience with. They tend to be a little more defensive. They tend to be a little bit older. They stand their ground more, and they're a lot more protective. So from that standpoint, it kind of gives you an idea of possibly what you were dealing with or up against. And again, that's generally when a bear flushes, it's either a subadult male, or a subadult animal altogether, or it's going to be a younger female that's given birth. But generally, they always come back. Very rarely do they not come back, especially if you get all the dogs up and scoot out of there.
Will they ever move the cubs if they feel like the nest has been, or the den has been disturbed too much? Will they pick up the cubs and take them somewhere else?
If they're harassed enough, let's say you kept going back, and we've had that happen too. You get some folks that they can't help themselves. They got to go back and look at the cubs and look at the sow, and then they bring their neighbors, and then their neighbors bring their neighbors, and next thing you know, you got this path wore down where everyone's coming to look at her. On a rare occasion, they'll pack up. Sometimes they'll leave them. Sometimes they'll abandon the cub altogether if they're young enough, or they'll move them. It really kind of depends on the circumstances. Depends on, basically the environment. If it's 3 feet of snow on the ground, they're probably going to try to sit tight as long as they possibly can. If it's a little bit warmer, like we've had some warmer winters, then the conditions are better for them to pack up and move a little bit further. Especially if there's another brush pile or something close by. Generally speaking, when a sow looks for a den, she kind of sets up 3 or 4 different dens or tests the area, so she has an idea of where to go if she does have.
Kelsey, this is the stuff we want to get into with you. This is all the good stuff. But to answer your original question, just to clarify for the audience, because I'm sure they are wondering, I did not look into the nest to see if there was any cubs. I was frantic trying to find out where my dog was. I didn't know where she was. I was toning her with the collar to make that audible noise to figure out where she was. She was directly across from the den, tucked up in the brush. Picture a T, the entrance into the den. Den's on the left. Dog was on the right, almost as if she was trying to get away or the bear carried her there. I don't know how she ended up there. I don't even know how the bear got in there because I couldn't get in there. I had to grab her by her, just describing, I had to grab her by her ear and kind of slide her out.
Right.
And the bear didn't want to leave the area either.
Right.
It got to the edge of the tree line and stopped and then turned around to start walking back.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there puckered up. And then it turns and walks back into the woods, and it gets into the woods and then stops again. And, you have dogs and you used your dogs for your bear research. And I have, so I'm trying to get to my dog to see if she's alive, but I also don't want to turn my back on this bear that could possibly come in on me. Was that a legitimate concern that I had in the back of my cowardly mind?
It's always a concern. I mean, let's be honest, they're a wild animal. You don't ever want to not be aware of things or aware of your surroundings. In the grand scheme of things, you probably were fine.
Okay.
They're it's always good to keep a close eye on the critters, but at the same token, there's a lot worse situations you can be in, and probably be more fearful than that particular situation. The fact that she got out of there, like I said, it's just a bad situation. She didn't want any more confrontation. She was just looking to go back to the nest and be done with the day.
Yeah.
The fact that you got in there, got your dog out, left the area, this is the best thing you could do.
Yeah. Really. Okay. So no, just like not to harp on the whole subject, but I like I said, this is for me to help grieve through the situation. I moved from Bergen County, Kelsey, where I used to live, in a very residential area. I moved up. I'm not going to say exactly where I live, but I moved up to that area. Mm-hmm. Okay. I fly my birds. I run my dogs in that whole area. What kind of things can I do to mitigate this type of thing from happening? Other than like my initial thought is, when I get to a brush pile that looks impenetrable, like there's like a bear could be in here. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking now it's time for me to start going downwind and get dogs to scent something in there. I got bears in my yard, multiple nights a week during the summer. So it's not like my dogs don't know what bears are. They don't want anything to do with them. Hackles go up, right. the whole 9 yards. So I guess going downwind, would that be something to do? Is there anything else that you would recommend?
There's a couple things that you can look for.
Okay.
If you're going, especially if you're going in towards a brush pile, where you might suspect. I mean, the first thing is you need to be aware of the habitat that bears are going to be in during this time of year. Right. All right. So things to look for are blowdowns. where you got a tree down with a big root ball that's sticking up in the air. They love those.
Yeah.
Brush piles, like the one you encountered, really dense brush piles, or where there's been logging and they pile a huge pile of brush down. Those are key areas. Like you said, that's also where you find the rabbits. So,
yeah.
What you want to do is you want to take a look around the area. Okay. What you're looking for. And again, it's a little hard right now because there's snow on the ground. So you don't always see it, but these are just some signs that you can kind of clue in on. If you see an area that's been raked, it literally looks like someone took a rake and raked the forest floor, and the whole area is devoid of leaves. All right. That's a really good sign that there's a den in the area.
Okay.
What bears do is they take those leaves, and that's what they pack their nest with, and that's what they lay on. And they will literally use their claws and rake all that stuff up and carry it into the den. So if you see an area, like I said, look like literally someone took a rake and raked it up, that should be a clue that there's a den nearby. Obviously, if you see a prevalence of what looks like a hole, something that's just the little bite marks around the outside edge of the brush, the brush is a bit off, things of that nature. Those are really good signs. It also could mean the rabbits are eating the brush too, or something of that nature. But,
right.
It's something just to kind of be aware of, kind of like, oh, wait a minute, maybe I should think twice. The other thing that I would recommend, especially this time of year, is if you're going up to a brush pile and you're rabbit hunting, especially, before you cut your dogs loose, or try to control them a little bit, listen. All right. If you sit at the outside of a brush pile for, let's say, 5 minutes before, especially again, if you suspect there might be bears there, this time of year, listen. All right. You're going to hear little nursing noises. You could hear some screams. It's going to be like a sound.
Okay.
It's not my best interpretation of it.
Right.
But basically, it sounds like a little motor humming. All right. Those are going to be cubs nursing. All right. That's a definite key in that you want to just, go look somewhere else for a rabbit at that point in time.
Okay.
Other than that, yeah, if your dogs, are scenting them, if you tell when they scent them, certainly be downwind of it so that the dogs can kind of key on that sort of thing. But other than that, there really isn't a whole lot you can do, unfortunately, just a little extra preparedness, a little more observation goes a long way. It really does.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of some other things that I've recommended to folks. You've already got the collar on the dog. That's really key. When we ran dogs on bears, being able to control that dog and pull that dog off at a moment's notice is super key.
Life or death. Yeah.
It really is.
And not just with bears, with pretty much everything else, it's life or death. Sure. That's why the collar's on.
Yep. Absolutely. It's interesting. I've been doing a lot of research and different things. And if you look at like folks that have timber wolves out in like Wisconsin and Minnesota, it's a huge issue for them just with wolves. I mean, these guys are losing 2 or 3 dogs a year when they run their dogs because the wolves will gang up on them. So losing dogs to wildlife in these kind of situations is not uncommon. Folks don't talk about it a lot, but it's not uncommon.
Yeah. Now, go ahead, Aaron. I
was gonna say I believe that wolves and coyotes would be more dangerous to hunting dogs than bears would be.
I would agree with that. I know more people that have lost dachshunds to coyotes than anything else.
I think you're probably right. There's definitely a higher percentage there.
Do you think it's mostly in this protective denning situation with cubs that the bears are dangerous to hunting dogs?
I'd say it's an increased risk for sure.
Yeah.
If your dogs are, it's not just hunting dogs either. If people are out hiking and, we've had people out just walking their dogs up in Wawayanda State Park or, these other parks, and their dogs kind of get away from them and you go sniff it. A lot of times they smell it or they hear the cubs and they just go to look. They've gotten hurt. So it's not just a hunting dog; it's all dogs. It's really, with the population that we have, the density of bears that we have, running across one, the likeliness is pretty high.
Yeah,
that's what I understand.
Just driving down Route 94 to the gym in the morning during the spring and summer, multiple times a month, slamming my brakes on because of a big old bear running across the road, or even a small bear running across. They're just, the area is. I said it earlier, and Kelsey, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just exaggerating, but it feels like an infestation. It just feels like there are so many bears. Like, why is there a different bear attempting to get into my garbage every night? I got the cameras. It's not the same bear. It's a couple different. It's like 4, 5, 6 different ones. Like it just seems like there's more than there needs to be. And I don't know if that's just me in the area I live in and my own biases, but like, is that correct? Is the number too high? Should it be lower? Like, what are your, at one point, this was your job. Obviously you don't do that anymore, but like, what's your opinion on that?
Well, I think it's certainly the population is higher than it should be. I don't think anyone would argue with that. The difficulty is trying to control the number. And that's what's really hard here in the state of New Jersey. Unfortunately, we've had a number of years where we've had, the season shut down, the season curtailed for various reasons. It's a battle. Let's be honest, it's a battle. And the issue you're facing now, unfortunately, is, we've had enough hunting seasons where a lot of the folks have been successful in harvesting a bear. And now, they don't want to harvest just any bear. They want to harvest a big bear.
Right.
Or maybe they just want to harvest one bear in a lifetime. Bear hunting isn't like deer hunting or rabbit hunting or pheasant hunting. It's typically guys one and done, or maybe two and done,
Right.
And we don't, as you're aware, we don't have a super huge hunting base. There was 50, 60, 70,000 sportsmen in the state of New Jersey that hunt, even big game. Number might even be smaller than that. And of those hunters, some of those guys are just strictly small game, or strictly deer hunters, or maybe strictly turkey hunters. The overall number of bear hunters in this state's less than 10,000. We can't even get 10,000 permits away when I was, the head of the bear program. And I still don't believe they can, because they're always available.
What obstacles do you think are in the way of an individual hunting bears? Because I can't help but to wonder if it's not a lack of willingness to hunt them, if it's more of a lack of opportunity.
There's definitely lack of opportunity to some degree. But I know, people that hunt on state land and that's all they hunt, and they're very successful. I think it really, what it boils down to is desire. Guys that are real, and bear hunt, let's face it, bear hunting is not easy.
No, it's so hard.
It's a hard animal to get out of the woods. It's a lot of dedication. If they opt to use bait, now you're talking about a huge expense. You're talking about a huge amount of time invested into it. And a lot of folks just aren't willing to put that into it. So there's a small number of people, relatively, that are into it. And unfortunately, there's not enough of those folks to control the numbers that are out there. All right. So even though we're taking the edge off, we're harvesting a good number of animals, the state's got a good program in place. It's basically just, there's just not enough to go around, not enough hunters to get the job done. So, ultimately, I think what the state's going to probably end up having to do is open up the number that can be harvested, encourage out of state hunting, try to advertise that, try to get more folks in here. Certainly work with landowners, try to open up property so folks can be more successful on land. Because and even then, you're probably fighting an uphill battle. It's going to be a problem. So,
do you think that my understanding is New York has a much different perspective on bear management and bear hunting, the state of New York?
It just, for me, it just feels that way. It just feels like season opens for 2.5 weeks in like September 11th till till almost October. And I believe the one year it was like you could shoot it with a bow, crossbow, shotgun, rifle, pistol. I think the one year it said. Like it almost is like saying without saying, just kill the bear that you just kill it. Let's get that initial number down, and then it shuts down and then opens up again, for early bow in like October 20th or something like that. And then it stays open for rifle, and it stays open for quite a while. So it just seems like it's a different kind of a culture than Jersey. Jersey just seems like it's, like you said, it was shut down. Then it's only, I haven't checked the regs, but it basically seems like it's almost like a couple of years there. It was only open for like 6 days out of the year to kill a bear.
Right.
And that was it.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. No, it's gone through its paces. And I guess the one thing I would encourage folks to realize is that it's a political process.
Right.
In order to even, when we started the bear program, when I talked to, the icons of bear management in this country, the folks that have been in bear management for their entire careers and, written books on the situation, they gave the state of New Jersey almost a 0% chance of ever establishing a bear hunting season.
Wow.
No one dreamt that could happen.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
So the simple fact that, we established a bear season in the state of New Jersey was just shy of unprecedented. No one thought it could happen. So the fact that we have it, we've established it. We've changed the culture. When we first started, back in 2001, 2003, we were actually battling our own sportsmen, our own agency. There's people in our agency, the sportsmen didn't want bear hunting. They didn't think we could do it here in this state. We had to really change the perspective of everybody out there in order to make them realize that you can, in fact, hunt bears successfully and not wipe the population out. Because everyone thought the minute we started bear hunting, that was going to be it. No more bears. And we, had to change that thought process. And the agency did. They did a great job of changing that perspective, changing the media's perspective, the general public's perspective. And now you're seeing much less protest, a lot more support, from the media, from the sportsmen, from everyone else. Yeah, there's still some political stuff there. It's New Jersey.
Right.
You're always going to have it. I mean, I hate to say it, but, hunting in the state of New Jersey is always, 2 or 3 votes away from extinction if the politicians had their way.
Correct.
Let's be honest. So, right. The sportsmen are key in this. If it weren't for the sportsmen's support, the sportsmen's motivation, their mobilization, sending in tens of thousands of support letters, in support of the bear season, there never would have been a bear hunting season. There just wouldn't have been.
Yeah.
So we've come a long way. What's that?
When did it start?
The very first bear season was in 2003.
Wow.
It was the first season we had.
That's crazy. That's not even that long ago.
Was there a season prior to all of this that stopped?
Yep, there was one. Last season was 1970. 33 years prior to that was the last season, before I was even born.
Jeez.
Wow.
And the reason they shut it down was because numbers were low. Numbers were low in New York, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey, primarily because there was really, indiscriminate hunting for the most part. No one really kept records. They weren't paying attention. You could shoot a bear pretty much whenever you wanted to. Very lax management in Pennsylvania and New York. And, the tri-state area realizes they needed to change the way they did business. So the first thing all 3 states did was shut down the hunting season in all 3 states and, rethought the thought process. The only difference being Pennsylvania and New York reopened their bear season after a couple of years, realizing that they needed to do that. And New Jersey decided that, their words, not mine, they didn't think the bears would cross the Delaware. They didn't think they'd swim across the Delaware. All right, that was their logic.
Oh my God, yeah.
they didn't open the season. That was their justification for not opening the season. They didn't think bears would come back into the state, so they didn't bother to, have any forethought on that. Obviously, we know bears can swim, and they also can walk across the New York, New Jersey border. There's no fence up, so they populated all on their own. They didn't get any help, and that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah.
Over time, the population has just grown and grown and grown. And, we are where we are right now. But it's going to take some change. They'll adjust the season as necessary. I have faith in the folks that are in charge. And, it's going to be a challenge. Just like all wildlife management is here in New Jersey.
Correct. Correct.
What happens with I don't know that I'd call it a complaint, Casey, but Casey reported his dog being killed to the state. What does the state do with that? Historically, I know you can't say what they're doing right now with it, but
right. Well, historically, in a situation like Casey's, because the bear wasn't really aggressive, it's just one of those bad situations that happen. We would chalk it up to that. There's really not much you can do. Now, if the bear came out of the den and ran down Casey's dog, different story. According to the policy, the bear would be euthanized at that point in time for killing the dog. So it's one of those things where it's an interpretation of the policy. I'm not really sure what the policy says anymore. I don't think it's changed, but I'm not familiar with how they're handling those things.
It's based off of what I discussed with them on the phone. And it's funny, Kelsey, because when I called to make the initial report, then I started getting calls from like all different numbers. I got one from this agency, then like Wildlife Control called me, and another, and they're all talking to me like with this tone of voice, like, we're not going to kill the bear because of this. And I was like, no, that's not why I'm calling. Like, I don't want you to kill the bear. I just wanted to make the report so that it's documented. But I was literally, Kelsey, 50 yards away from the parking lot. Okay. So there's, as you know, there's that many people rolling in there. It was 50 yards away. Like,
sure.
In my mind, I could be completely wrong, but like to me, obviously the den was beautifully constructed and it was a very nice, tight place. But like to me, in the middle of a field next to that type of traffic, like that's not to me the ideal place for a bear to den. Or am I completely wrong?
Well, yes and no is the answer to that question. We've had bears den underneath houses, but
okay.
We've had bears den in the middle of Newton. We've had bears den in the middle of pretty much every town in northern New Jersey at some point in time. So It's not atypical. It's not something that you necessarily want to have. So every case was dealt with on a case by case basis when I was in charge. If it was something that we felt that was going to be the homeowner could handle it, it was not something that we could keep people away from and causing an issue, then we just kind of let nature run its course. If we felt it was something that was going to be a problem, again, this may have been one of those situations. Certainly it warrants someone to come take a look at it. You look at the situation and maybe the bear, if she doesn't have cubs at this point in time, bump her off and move her out of there. That's certainly an option. It's not as if it shouldn't be looked at and safety shouldn't be taken into consideration. But again, that's not my call anymore. That's other folks' call. But that's when I was in charge, that's how we handled it. We took it on a case by case basis and looked at the situation. Certainly we're not looking to endanger other people, endanger other people's pets or anything of that nature.
Right.
Do you think that's a result of too many bears and with too little suitable habitat?
No, I think it's just, bears are comfortable where the bears are comfortable. We've got, especially in that location, there are so many animals there. And then the reason there's so many animals there is because there's so much garbage.
Well, that's what I mean. Do you think you said earlier, there's probably too many bears, right?
Yes.
So the denning, they don't have, I would assume and this is a genuinely a question for you, they don't have enough suitable den sites in that area.
No.
Or under a house, I guess, is a perfectly suitable den site as far as they're concerned.
As far as they're concerned, it is. I don't. That's a hard question because, we've had bears that were spent their entire year out in the middle of the woods. Like you put a radio collar on them and they'll spend the entire, spring, summer, and fall out in the middle of nowhere. And then the denning season comes up and they hightail it right into town and find themselves a porch.
That's so crazy to me.
There's plenty of spots for them to den. They can den in trees. They can den in. There's so many rock cavities out there that would blow your mind in areas where you wouldn't even think there are. Rock or tree cavities that you wouldn't even think a raccoon could squeeze into, a bear will squeeze into.
Kelsey, I have to stop you because I have to ask this question before I forget. Sorry, Aaron. When I'm nervous, right, about my dogs are bred to go into dens and holes to flush rabbits out. What circumference should I be nervous about?
15 inches.
Holy crap!
Because bears don't have collarbones, so they can squeeze into like ridiculously tiny spaces.
They're kind of like a mouse. If they can get their head in, the rest of it will go in.
Okay, great. That's fantastic.
So it's no bigger than the laptop screen area in a lot of cases.
That's insane.
Granted, some of them are bigger, but I pulled 500-600 pound bears out of a hole that I could barely squeeze myself into. I'm 250 pounds.
Yeah, you're a big guy. You're last time I saw you in person, you were like what, 6'2", 6'3"? Big guy.
5'11", but thanks for the thanks for the vote of confidence there.
I'm also like 5'7". I was 13 when we were out there, so you looked a lot bigger than that. We're gonna get into that though. So okay, continue what you were going, Aaron. I'm sorry.
I guess basically what I was trying to say to Aaron is that there's plenty of spots for them to den. They'll den at the base of a tree. They don't even have to have an enclosure. A lot of bears will just rake up a bunch of leaves or needles and be at the base of a big pine tree. So I mean, there's plenty of spots for them to den. It's just what they prefer or what they maybe where they were born. And I really don't know what motivates them to pick which den that they go for. Obviously, the more bears you have, the more likelihood there is that you're going to run across them. Yes, I mean I think that's part of it too, but they don't specifically all come into town because there's not enough caves out in the woods. I don't believe that.
Gotcha.
Okay. All right.
That's interesting.
That's good to hear. Listen, because I'm convincing myself that bear shouldn't have been there and all this and that, and that's good to hear that. It's good. Thank you, Kelsey.
What's the craziest den you've ever seen?
Good question.
Craziest den I've ever seen. Natural or unnatural?
Both. We want both.
Want both?
Yeah.
Probably the craziest den I ever got to experience was actually up there in Vernon again. And I can tell you where it is. I don't know if you want to bleep it out or whatnot, but basically it's on one of the golf courses up there. And the den, we were working on a female. They had 5 cubs, 5 yearlings in with her.
Wow.
Okay. So figure each one of the yearlings has about between 75 and 100 pounds. Then the mother, she's 200, 250 pounds. So we went to go, tranquilize them, pull them out to do research on them. They were on a side of a cliff, basically. And we crawled, basically we saw them in there and we went to go dart them and they disappeared. They completely disappeared. And we're like, because, these dens, they'll go back in their ways and then they'll branch off and go one way or something. And they might be around a corner. So you got to kind of like weasel your way in the hole, get around the corner and dart one at a time kind of thing. And so we snuck our way in there and got into the back, peeked around the corner, and they still weren't there. There was no bears to be found. So then we start looking for an alternate, entrance / exit, because sometimes they'll have a back door to some of these dens, and they'll sneak out the back door. Well, there was no back door. So we couldn't figure out where, all 6 of these animals disappeared to. And, because we're talking a lot of mass.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some serious, animal matter here. And as we kept going further and further back into the den, all of a sudden we saw this little opening that went straight down. And we stuck a light in there, and the hole, it was like it was a cavern, all right, with shelves sticking out. And on each one of the shelves going down probably 30 feet, there was a bear sitting on each shelf going down into this hole.
Oh my gosh.
So I mean, that was the craziest. I mean, because we just turned around and left at that point in time, because it's like, we're not going to go down there after that. But yeah, some of the rock cavities and crevices they can get themselves into are just amazing. I mean, you wouldn't even think those formations are out there in New Jersey, but they are.
Jeez. All right, you got to tell me where that is so that I can just avoid that area.
Yeah, I can fill you in.
Okay.
The probably one of the craziest unnatural, and there was a lot of these. Or at least maybe the craziest story with an unnatural one was, the town of Mountain Lakes?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. It's pretty populated, of course, you know what I'm saying? We had a 500-pound bear go into the center of town and climb underneath a gentleman's house. And we had probably 5 or 6 bears underneath people's homes every year. So that wasn't atypical. What made this more atypical was how the gentleman found out that there was a bear underneath his house. So the gentleman was big into Elton John. He liked Elton John music. So as he was, going into his dining room playing Elton John, all of a sudden you would feel this rumbling underneath his feet, and all of a sudden something would hit the bottom of his floor really hard. And he couldn't figure out what that was. It was like really odd. So he turned the Elton John music off, and it would stop. So, he's like, kind of weird. So like the next day he did it again, turned on his Elton John music, had his coffee or whatever. All of a sudden, this time it hit so hard it practically threw him out of the chair, at the dining room table he was sitting in. So this time he's like, all right, he's got a handyman that he called over, because it's obviously underneath, because he has a crawl space underneath the house. And he hires the caretaker to come over and take a look. And here's this really big, 500-pound bear. And every time he would turn the Elton John on, the bear would stand up and just slam the bottom of the floor and shake this guy up, really mess with him.
Oh my gosh.
And to get into that location, he had to crawl over all of his septic pipes, all of his water pipes, all of the wiring for underneath the house. I mean, I couldn't crawl through all that. Here's this 500-pound animal through all that in the back of the house. It was amazing how that animal got in there. And so this was a situation where we decided, we probably needed to take the bear out from underneath the house. And we did. We set up the situation to do that. And the crawl space underneath the house actually opened up into the gentleman's kitchen. So there was nice. You could go into past the heater, the furnace, and it would go right into the kitchen. So I had one of the technicians, basically in his kitchen in case the bear decided to come into the kitchen. And then I crawled in to dart the bear from a window access. And as I got closer, I saw the bear. He was at the far end of the house, probably 30 feet or so. And so I darted the bear with the first dart. Bear got up, which is not atypical for them to do. And he starts walking towards me. Well, typically what they do is they walk towards the light because they want to escape. Problem with that generally is that you're in front of the light because that's how you got in there as well. So when you do this sort of darting procedure, you want to make sure you're aware of what the bear's doing and what's going on, so you can get out of the bear's way. In this particular situation, the bear decided he wanted to go to the kitchen. So he starts heading directly towards my technician at the kitchen because he's going to go in the house to get out because it's probably the easiest access at the time. So as the bear approached him, my technician darted him. And of course, I'm sitting, laying there because I'm on my belly laying. And I turned around and I looked. And all of a sudden, the bear, once he got darted from my technician the second time, he looks at me and instantly we made eye contact, and it's like, crap, I know where he's going next. And he immediately starts coming towards me, which is not unusual. I mean, this is I had planned on that. So I start scooting backwards as fast as I can go. And I had thankfully had 2 darts in my dart rifle. And as I looked up, the bear had traversed all of that wires and all the plumbing and all of the cast iron, everything, septic and everything, had traversed all that effortlessly. Okay. To the point where he was like 6 inches off the end of my dart gun barrel.
Oh my God.
And so I pulled the trigger and I darted him a 3rd time. And that stopped him for a brief second so that I could back out the rest of the way. Well, when I backed out, there's like, in front of the window for when you're going underneath a crawl space, they have that little window well area. Well, I backed up into that and it stopped me from going anywhere. So I tried to get myself out of the way a little bit more, and there was a big rhododendron bush to my left. And I rolled into that. I couldn't get out of the way. So here comes the bear out. And just so nonchalantly, again, I'm like 250 pounds. The bear grabs a hold of my leg and picks me up off the ground and just tosses me to the side and then just walks on his way the rest of the day. So,
oh my gosh.
That was probably one of the more interesting adventures we had with a bear in an interesting den. We could talk all night about really, other episodes. But that's one of the more interesting ones. Because we basically named that bear the Elton John bear because he apparently didn't appreciate Elton John.
Yeah. I just I remember as a kid when we went with you and you would set snares and different things and barrel traps to catch these bears. And I mean, we went with you I think we went maybe like 2 or 3 days or 2 days. I can't remember how many days you let us come with you, but I just remember we snared a mother and like 4 cubs down the edge of like this field, like right inside the woods. And we darted everybody. We did the tattoo. We took the samples. And then we went over to another area it was a bear that was a problem bear. And instead of euthanizing it or relocating it, we decided to haze it. And then we released the dogs to kind of harass it and kind of show it that humans are not something that you should just kind of basically to instill some sort of level of like respect for humans into the bear. Mm-hmm. Give it a chance to like understand and get out of there.
Yep.
And then you were telling us about like the denning stuff. And I remember you turned to my mom and you said that the kids are not allowed to come on. That I remember you said the kids are not allowed to come on that because it sounded the way you're describing it. It's just how you said it. It's just, I mean, listen, going in there to get my dog out, like I got to get my dog out, but to go in there for no other reason than to like gather data and put a little dart into a bear. Like, I don't know if I could do that. Aaron, can you do that?
I think I could.
Actually, yeah, that's a stupid question. Aaron sticks his hands in holes all the times and pulls out possums and all kinds of stuff. For me, I don't know that I could go headfirst into a hole in the ground to dart a giant bear. That's got to be a little puckering. If there's, I'm trying to think of another adjective, but that's the only thing I can.
You've mentioned puckering a few times today.
I've been puckering is the word of the day, I think.
Well, I always attribute it to there's always jobs that people do that people are like kind of crazy, right? So
right,
but they're professionals at it. They've done it. They know how to handle it. They know how to do it. It's really no different than that. You learn how to read the animal, their body language, their behaviors, the sounds they make. You read the situation. You do it enough times. You talk to enough people and that sort of stuff. So I mean, it's all controlled chaos, just like pretty much everything else in life is.
Right.
And you try to do it as safely as you possibly can for both you and the animal. Obviously, human safety comes first, but you always want to make sure the animals are safe as well. And I do apologize. They constantly had restrictions on us taking folks out to do den work. Getting permission for folks to go is always a challenge. So, but going out and doing den work with folks was probably one of the most favorite thing I ever did. because it really gave us an opportunity to share the experience, share wildlife with folks. And it was a great opportunity to educate folks, showing them what we did and how we did it. And it's really a shame that it's not something that's continued, because it's really how I was trained when I worked in Pennsylvania with Gary Alt. He took that opportunity to really educate folks and spread the information concerning bear management, wildlife management in general. And I think folks really long for that. They like that experience. They like that education. Being a part of it helps them understand things much better. And it's an incredible asset for any wildlife manager.
I have some questions and discussions. And we didn't really discuss any of it, but I'm just like, and I don't want to like open up a can of worms or whatever, but is the state of New Jersey, and I mean basically like Governor Murphy and like, the people that are in charge, are they in opposition to what your job description was? Meaning if you say more bears need to be removed from this landscape, like, is that like a fight with them to allow it? Do you have to meet them in the middle? So basically, like, my question is like, me and Aaron had the opportunity to go to West Virginia this year, and we hunted bears over dogs. Super efficient. We were able to tree the bear, make a decision whether we wanted to shoot it or not. The age of the bear, the sex of the bear, like, it was very obvious, and we could either decide to leave or to harvest the bear. Mm-hmm. Now, like, obviously, that's not going to happen in Jersey anytime soon. I mean, we wish it could, but it's not going to. Like, when you would present, like, are you presenting like, okay, you can put your bait pile, but then you have to be 100 yards away on the ground. Remember that? Mm-hmm. Like, who's coming up with that? Were you guys coming up with that? Or was like the state, like, did you have to have like almost like you're having like a negotiation over like some sort of a job, or like, hey, okay, I'll give you a bait pile, but you got to be 300 yards away. And then you're like, well, give us 150. And they're like, oh, we'll give you 100. Like, how does it, like, you know what I mean? Like, how did that work? Like, where are they coming up with this stuff?
Yes and no is the answer to that question.
Okay.
All right. And let me explain what I mean. So, as a wildlife manager at the level I was at, all right, my job is to present the data and what's taking place. All right. So I go to the Fish and Game Council. I say, here's the deal. This is the number of bears we think are out there. These are the complaints that we're having. My recommendation is we need to have a hunting season. These are my recommendations for a hunting season. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. Generally, more liberal, we've got to get the job done, common sense hunting regulations sort of thing. And then once I make that presentation to the Fish and Game Council, and this is the same for deer, turkeys, anything that you hunt. You make the presentation to the Fish and Game Council. Then it's up to the Fish and Game Council to mull that information over and come up with what they want to propose. Okay. So they propose, generally, as a general rule, they'll propose what the biologist recommends. Okay. Or maybe there's a slight variation and, little tweaks here and there, but generally what they're going to propose is basically what they're told would work. All right. They may add some stuff to that. Like I said, they may ask for more inquiries, like maybe they want a season set up like West Virginia, or maybe they want something set up like New York or Pennsylvania, whatever the case may be, you'll look into that. In most states, that's where it stops. Okay. The Fish and Game Council or the commission or whatever the lawmaking body is, they make the proposal. Generally, if there's any kind of legislative interaction or political interaction, they're all on a fairly good relationship basis type of thing, and they go along with it for the most part. Here in New Jersey, it's a little more strenuous. Okay, there's a lot more political intervention. There's a lot more opinions that need to be taken into place. And if there's a compromise or something of that nature made, it's between whatever political bodies involved in the Fish and Game Council. So that's generally where that takes place. Usually the biologists don't really have much say in that at that point.
Okay. So you present the data, and then it's up to the Fish and Game Council to kind of haggle with the governing body over what the outcome is.
Right.
And who is the Fish and Game Council? Because I've heard from a couple different sources that a lot of the Fish and Game Councils have been, and I don't know if this is true, I'm just repeating what I've heard, that they've been captured by like anti-hunting, sentiment.
No, there's the Fish and Game Council is made up of individuals that have been put there by the different regions of the state. There's I believe there's 3 sportsmen's representatives. There's 3 Farm Bureau representatives. There's 1 public representative.
He's the problem.
Well, maybe not. You never know.
Let's get him out of there.
And I don't remember the whole. I thought there was 11 people on the Fish and Game Council. So whatever it is, there's basically an agricultural group. Have representatives. Okay. The sportsmen have representatives. So if you go to a Sportsmen's Federation meeting, the New Jersey Sportsmen's Federation clubs. Can't even say it. Sorry. They nominate people in their region to be on the Fish and Game Council. So no, they get a good fair representation. The sportsmen are being represented, the ag department's being represented. So unless they've changed things I'm unaware of, but that's
no. I just heard it in passing. I didn't hear any great detail. So thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, I was. But okay, so then that body has to basically debate with like Governor Murphy and his crooked teeth, basically.
If Governor Murphy decides to be challenging, then they would go to the Fish and Game Council and negotiate. So basically what I'm saying is the crazy rules that you're looking at are not the Fish and Game Council's crazy rules, even though they're the ones that basically have to put it in place. Those crazy rules came from someone other than the Fish and Game Council or the biologist is one.
Okay. So now my follow-up question to that, in a perfect world, should that even be taken? Because there's reality, right? There's reality, and then there's like everybody's opinion. So like in a perfect world, is the bait on the ground and then 150 yards on, you have to be on the ground 150 yards from your bait. Like, is that like, should all of that nonsense be even like considered, or we have to consider it because of the state that we live in?
Well,
you know what I mean?
Right. Now, in order to answer that question, you have to first understand baiting in New Jersey. Okay. So let me start with that. There is a law that was enacted by the legislature that allows baiting for deer in the state of New Jersey. Now, when they enacted that law, okay, this wasn't Fish and Game. This was actually from the legislature that allowed that to take place. When they enacted that for deer hunting, it was designed to control deer herds in urban settings and all, that kind of situation. When they enacted that, they didn't consider bear hunting to be an issue at the time. They didn't foresee that. So because they didn't include or exclude bears in the law, putting bait out is therefore allowed, okay, by default.
Right.
All right. So because you didn't mention bears in the law, it means you basically can do it. Now, in order to change that, let's say you wanted to change the law to include bears in bear hunting. Well, now that means you have to open up that law again. Okay. And then you can have opposition. You may lose baiting for deer.
Right.
You may
lose
baiting altogether.
It's risky to open it back up.
It's a risky move to open that up. So ultimately, the decision was made to leave it alone. Okay. So by not enacting it, we're not supporting it, nor are we denying it. So therefore, you can do it. I don't know if that makes really good sense to you.
No, it makes sense. It makes perfect sense. Yeah.
So that's why no one has opened up that can of worms, is because it's better to have that in place so that we have some control over, as opposed to possibly losing it altogether.
Right. So it's set in place for the deer hunters, and it's by default, it's set up for the same for bears. So let's just leave it alone,
right,
and we'll just do what we got to do.
Right.
And just harvest the animals that we can, because if we open it up, it could be a huge can of worms and we could lose everything based off of the opposition.
Right. So the rule stipulates, because deer hunting specifically stipulates that you can hunt over bait in a tree stand. Okay. And it doesn't say that for bears. So then they can put the caveat on there. Okay, well, we're going to have you be 150 yards away. You got to be sitting on the ground, all this other stuff. So you can make some of those stipulations, because it's a gray area that we're working in.
Right.
And those are generally concessions.
Got it.
I don't live in New Jersey, so it's the same rule, or it's not the same rule for deer and bear. So for deer, you can hunt over a bait pile in a tree, and bear you cannot.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
They seem to, Kelsey, correct me if I'm wrong, but they seem to switch it up like year by year. They give you like different rules.
It's not year by year. They did change it this past year when they got the new comprehensive black bear management plan in place. That was one of the concessions, along with, you can't shoot smaller bears or bears in a group. Being on the ground, you got to be 150 yards away from the bait on the ground and all that sort of stuff. Those were all concessions that, in order to get the season open back up again, they agreed to. So
it just seems to me like we hear this term ballot box biology, and it's kind of like where you kind of have to play this game because the general public is able to kind of weigh in on topics that they know nothing about, essentially. And I don't know if there's like a clear solution to it, but it's like, if the biologists are recommending this, are you ever, when you were in charge of that, were you ever recommending means of take and method of take?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. And but then, like we discussed earlier, that's not necessarily like that you present that we would recommend this, and then the board has to basically present that to the government, and then the government has to either accept it or they go into like some sort of debate over that.
Well, ideally what happens is they send the recommendations to the governor out of courtesy. Okay. In years past, that was just a courtesy to send him, here's what we're going to do. This is what we're proposing. This is what's going to happen. And most governors could care less, because the Fish and Game Department and everything, we're funded with sportsmen's dollars. We're not really 100%. We're not reliant on tax dollars. Okay.
Right.
We're, Pittman Robertson, that kind of money, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
In sportsmen's dollars from, license sales and things of that nature. So it was a courtesy to send that information to the governor's office. And generally the governor said, okay, great, knock yourself out. Yeah. We really don't care. It's when it becomes such a political issue, then, we start having these other discussions where they're coming back and saying, no, we want to shut down the season. They made threats of absolving the Fish and Game Council if they went through with things. There was lots. I mean, the history is torrid. I mean, it really truly is. And I don't know if all the sportsmen know just how much folks have had to go through to get to where we are today. I mean, when I said earlier it was a miracle we even had a bear season and got a bear season, you just can't imagine the fights that took place to get where we're at today. So it is frustrating, that we still have some of these constraints and some of these, rules that we have to, hoops that we have to jump through. But I think it's important to understand that as things change politically, hopefully, maybe we'll get a Republican governor that could care less about fish and game and everything goes smooth. Who knows what's going to happen? Hopefully that's what we're going to face. If we don't face that, well, then hopefully the next governor is, going to be supportive and we'll listen to the biologists, instead of, blow us off. I mean, I'll give you a story. I'll give everyone a story. We went in to give commissioner, I won't even say which commissioner it was, a presentation on what was taking place in the state and what our recommendations were going to be, what our population estimate was. So there was a whole group of us there. Because this wasn't just me. This was a group. It took a whole group of people to get, all this research and all this work done. So we go in, we give our presentation, explain everything to them, answer all the questions, explain to them what our population estimate is based on, the best sound science we had. The assistant commissioner, I think it was assistant commissioner at the time. No, it was the commissioner. He looks at us, grabs a napkin, writes down a number, slides it across the table. He goes, "That's your population estimate. If I see any other number in the media other than that, you're fired."
Oh my goodness.
Wow. That's the kind of nonsense you're dealing with.
Jeez.
Okay. So, and those threats happened all the time. So there's some, these administrators that are at the top of the agency, they took a beating. They really did,
But but just Kelsey, it's crazy because we're not talking about deer. We're not talking about, cottontail rabbits. We're talking about something that can kill somebody. We're talking about something that could be an actual legitimate threat to the public if the population becomes out of control and animals are not kept in check during a hunting season, which is really the only option that we have to keep them in check. And we can get into development and encroaching on habitat and all that. Like we understand that. We discussed that ad nauseum on the podcast. I just don't understand how this is a reality that we have to like we're working a real estate deal or a construction project where they're sliding a number across the table where we have to, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like it just seems so like asinine to me that like that's what you formerly had to deal with and like us as sportsmen have to deal with, and what me, and as we discussed already, the bear wasn't at fault. There's really it was just a bad situation. But there's just, I'm just talking about my I gotta ratchet strap my garbage to my deck, and like, there's just bears everywhere. So it's just a problem. So I just don't understand that we have to deal with this kind of stuff. But I guess we really do.
It's
currently
a reality. Again, I'm not familiar with to what level folks are dealing with now. Like I said, I've been out of the game here in New Jersey on that aspect of things for long enough. So things could definitely be much different. But what I will tell you, I recently spent some time out in Wyoming working for the Wyoming Game and Fish Department. And I've spent a lot of time talking to different fish and game departments over the years and whatnot. More and more agencies are getting public opinion. All right. So it's no longer, and they're taking public opinion as part of the management process, right, wrong, or indifferent. It's always good to have public support. Okay. I don't ever want to make it sound like you shouldn't have public support, but it should be, based on the science in an ideal world. Okay. If you look at New York State, they manage almost entirely on surveys that they do. There's very little on the ground work with the animal science aspect of things. They do a lot of surveys. They do a lot of public information, and they manage their populations based on that. So they'll send out a survey and they'll ask the people, "Do you think there's too many bears?" And whatever that survey comes back with, "Oh yeah, there's too many bears. Okay, well, let's change the regs and increase the harvest." Or if they say, "No, there's not enough bears," they'll decrease the harvest so the population increases.
Right.
A lot of these agencies are moving towards including a lot more public opinion. And there's a good reason for that, because you need public support. But it's a dangerous thing in the respect that you can let it get out of hand. And
100%.
Hand.
100%, because the term in the hunting community is ballot box biology, and you have people that live in an apartment in Jersey City. There's not enough bears. I've never seen a bear in my life. And then you got me living in northern New Jersey, and I got 4, 5, 6 different bears trying to get in my garbage every night in the spring. Like, you have no idea what I'm dealing with. You live in Jersey City, bro. Like, why are you voting on something that affects the actual, like, rural population? You know what I mean? Like, it has nothing to do with, like,
sure.
In my opinion, it's like, just keep your mouth shut. Like, but I understand, Kelsey. Like, and I'm not a biologist. I don't have to answer to anybody, and it's like, so I can just say something stupid like that. But it just sounds like a lot of hoops that you had to jump through. But Aaron, I think we can switch gears from political BS. I have a couple different questions. I know we're going for like 2 hours here, but I want to, like, Aaron, do you have any questions? Because I got a million.
Sure. I do want to know, we're kind of jumping here. Well, not so much. Hounds, the use of hounds in hunting bears. I have my suspicions as to why it's not done in New Jersey, why it's not legal in New Jersey. But what can you say about that?
When we looked at the use of hounds in New Jersey, we just didn't feel there was enough room to run bears safely.
That's fair. That's
fair. What I figured.
So, it was more of a safety thing. Is there anything wrong with it? No. If you've got the space to do it, we just don't really have the space here in New Jersey. We were going to have car accidents. We were going to have dogs getting killed and who knows what else. So it just wasn't really going to be a viable option.
Okay.
That's totally fair. That makes perfect sense. And even in West Virginia, like we discussed, I don't know if we clarified this, Aaron, on the episode with Kirk out there in West Virginia, but it's only allowed in a handful of counties in West Virginia that they're allowed to do it. In other counties, they can't.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
It's a county by county basis based off of the rural space that they have to let the dogs work and push. So I mean, if I cut my dogs loose in way yonder, I mean, they'll be across Route 94 and in my backyard in 25 minutes,
Well, when we ran bears with dogs, for aversive conditioning situations, we had to be real careful where we did that, and we had to have really good control of the dogs because you could easily get into a situation where, there was a couple of times when our dogs took off and they were gone. Like, I had to go driving around half the night to bring them back because they just went on a tear and the collar didn't work right. And next thing I know, the bears, I released one on Mud Pond Road and I picked her up over in downtown Hardiston kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? It was over the hill and through the woods and whatnot. So it's definitely, it can get out of control really quick, and it just wasn't something that we felt we could safely do.
What now, Kelsey? Those beautiful, impressive dogs that you used when we joined you. That was going on 20 years ago. What breed of dog was that? I remember you gave us a little bit of a history of them. They used to use them in early America to like defend forts and stuff like that. What was the breed of that dog?
The black-mouthed yellow cur.
Black-mouthed yellow cur. Okay, and that's still right, Aaron. Aaron's the dog guy, that's still a traditional bear dog, I believe. A cur, black-mouthed cur.
I'm not sure. If I'm not mistaken with you.
I listen. I just remember seeing the dog, and I just remember that is an impressive, intimidating-looking animal. And so you brought those dogs along with us, even when we were just doing snaring work. Was that just for the dog's sake? Because listen, Aaron, we're houndsmen. We love running dogs. Did you bring them along just for that sake, or was there a secondary purpose that they were brought along for?
Basically, we just kept the dogs with us all the time. We wanted the dogs with us, expose them to as many bear situations as possible, have them comfortable around working with bears. And the only way you can do that is to have them with you 24/7. So where we went, the dogs went.
That's great.
Why did you pick that breed?
We took the advice of the folks down in Louisiana, actually, the bear biologist down there. She had done a lot more research into the situation. We were looking for an alternative method for keeping bears out of trouble. This seemed like a reasonable means to try to do. We had seen a presentation at Eastern Black Bear Workshop about the work they were doing. And the reason they picked was because, unlike the Crillian bear dog, the black-mouthed yellow cur was a little more controlled. You could pull them off of a bear situation and an interaction a lot easier than a Crillian bear dog. Crillian bear dogs are great out west, where you can let them run for, a mile or two, and then go run them down or whatever the case, because you have such wide open spaces, and it's not a big deal. Here, we wanted an animal that had a little bit shorter attention span. Our dogs,
Right.
would run a bear for, let's say, 15, 20 minutes, and then they'd get bored. And, especially if the bear went up a tree, they'd get bored and we could call them off. So we had a high intensity interaction, a lot of yapping and snapping, as it were, at the bear, waking the bear up, snapping at him, giving him little nibbles, chasing him along. And then ultimately, they would go up a tree. We'd let the bear come down, send the dogs after him again, do that 2 or 3 times, and then call it good.
And the purpose of that, like we discussed earlier, was just to try to just kind of get the bear to understand that humans, dogs, get away from it, keep moving, don't engage.
Give them a bad experience with humans. We would shoot them with rubber buckshot, rubber batons, noisemakers, just make it just as unpleasant as possible. We did a research project on the effectiveness of that. And what we found is that if you caught a bear early enough, like a youngster, 2 years old, 3 years old, something of that nature, a subadult animal, and you gave them a good treatment, caught them in getting into trash or causing an issue or whatever, and then, beat up on them a little bit, they tended to avoid the area for quite some time because they just didn't want to come back. Older animals, they came back the next day or that same day. They just didn't care. So that was the answer to that.
Yeah, I remember I'm just going to tell a quick story. I just remember we had a drum, I guess it's called the drum trap, next to a dumpster at like an apartment complex on the edge of a rural area, and we trapped a bear in it. And I remember you had two of those dogs, and you had one that was more lanky and kind of taller, and one that was short and stocky. And I remember we got the drum trap set up in like a safe area away from people. And you said, all right, hold the collar on this dog, but you got to really hold him until I tell you to let him go. And I remember, I think it was the technician that lifted up the gate. The bear came out and he ran to the edge of the field, and then he stopped. And when he stopped, first of all, the dog is going ballistic. It's like, I'm 13 years old, it's dragging me across the ground. And when the bear stopped, that's when you guys, that's when we started hazing the bear. And then you told me to release the dogs. And then we released the dogs, and I just remember they ran in there, and the bear turned around and tried to swipe one of them. And then they got on it, and they just pushed it all the way off into the woods. And then I believe on the e-collar, you just gave them a little tone, and then they just turned around and came back. And I'll never forget it. I just remember getting dragged. My knees were all scraped up, and you were, it's just.
Hey, you make it sound like I was abusing you, man. I'm like,
no, man, dude, that was awesome. That was like those are some of the fondest memories. I mean, I remember me and my brother trying to hold up that scale on the one bear, and I wasn't even strong enough to lift the thing up, man. And me and my brother were working out all the time, and we couldn't even lift that sucker up, trying to get the weight on those bears and tattooing the lip and taking I don't know if you remember. I just remember I went to take the flesh sample, because you take a flesh sample from the ear, the hole punch.
Yep.
The bear woke up 3 times and spun around on me. It spun around on me and And you were like, get back. And you like threw me. And then you just like took the dart gun and you darted him again. And yeah, oh man, it was so great, man. It was
Aaron's
so
gonna think
great.
I was trying to kill you off now.
No, listen, you picked the right kids to come with you because we were into that stuff, man. We loved it. It was so great. And then you were like, all right, this mama bear and her 2 cubs, they're gonna wake up. You guys just make sure that they just get up and walk away, and we're gonna go check the other group over there. And we go over there, and you left the technician with us, and just oh man, it was just. I just remember that was my first time ever getting like up close with a bear and watching the mama bear before you darted her jump up the tree, but she couldn't go up the tree because she was snared. But then watching those claws just slide through that tree like butter, I was like, oh my, I'm like, this is an animal that could just kill you with no problem whatsoever. I mean, it was just that experience just, and that's what I talk about on the show. Like I have problems with bears where I live. We obviously discussed all that, but I love bears. I think they're like they're the coolest animal in our area. Like I have no ill will towards them. And the bear that killed Ginger, I'll get you during hunting season, but I have no ill will towards that bear, to be honest. So
yeah.
Now, Kelsey, have you had any like legitimate, besides that bear picking you up and chucking you out of the way? Have you had any close encounters with bears in the field in the course of your duties?
That was probably the closest encounter I ever had.
Yeah, it sounds pretty close.
That was close enough. I mean, we were out looking for dens a couple of times, and there's different types of dens where they kind of bury themselves underneath the ground and whatnot, and you would fall through, and find yourself standing on top of a bear, occasionally once in a while. But yeah, the only other real close encounter I had when I was really first learning how to work with bears over in Pennsylvania and working for Gary Alt. And, he had set me up with a gentleman who was feeding bears over there, which at the time was not illegal. And he had probably 20 different bears coming to his house on a regular basis. And it was my job as a technician to basically sit in his kitchen and wait for the bears to come in. And I would dart the bears, all night long, go out and tag them and do the same thing we do here in New Jersey. And this one particular night, this one bear came in and happened to be a favorite of the homeowner. And he was very comfortable with the bear. And again, I was just learning. I was still in college. This was my internship at the time. So I was really a novice with what I was doing. And, I had stepped outside on the porch with the bear as he was eating his Twinkies, literally. And the bear was used to the homeowner being there, but he was not used to me being there. And I was snapping away, taking pictures of the animal. And all of a sudden, the bear just decided he'd had enough of me taking pictures, and he just walked over to me and he backed me up against the house and basically sniffed me from head to toe. And there for about 30 seconds, I just wasn't sure what was going to happen or what the next move was going to be. Because I mean, this was a big animal. I mean, he was over 500 pounds because we had tagged him earlier. And ultimately, he did nothing. He was fine. He just wanted to know who I was and what I was doing, but gave me enough of a scare that I got back inside the house and never did that. I learned from that stupid human move is what I call those. So, we're all guilty of them, being fascinated by that, just crazy things happen. You just, as a wildlife biologist, every wildlife biologist has crazy stories because all sorts of nuts, crazy things happen. All sorts of
it's just incredible to me that you got paid for, like, that's an internship that you got paid for, assuming. It's just that I'll do that for free. Yeah. That sounds so fun.
It started off free that summer, and it was supposed to be a free internship. And the guy they hired to do it quit like a week after I started, going out with him. So it was funny. Gary goes, well, I need a technician. Do you want to go? You want the job? And I'm like, well, sure, but I don't even know how to catch a bear. And he goes, don't worry about it. I'll teach you how to catch a bear. So I got a 1-day education on how to go out and catch bears. He took me out, showed me how to set the snares. The very next day, we caught a bear. He showed me how to work it up. He handed me the keys to the Chevy Blazer and said, "Knock yourself out." He gave me the entire summer, and I was in charge of catching bears for the Pennsylvania Game Commission. And we caught 79 bears that summer. And at the end of the summer, he goes, "You know what? I think you should go to grad school." And he helped me get into grad school. And that's literally how my career got started, was, by accident, more or less. But yeah, just what happens. Crazy.
Wow. That's incredible. Aaron, go ahead.
Well,
you have any questions?
So since you're no longer with the state of New Jersey, Brian Melvin had mentioned that he bought some bear bait from you. Is this a business you got going? What's the story with that?
It is, to a degree. It's something that as the bear biologist, we had to have bait, to do the research trapping, to the, nuisance work, things of that nature. So having contacts to get it was something that I always had, even working, the agency. When I left the agency, ultimately became an option for making some money, and it was served a purpose. Guys, needed to find bait, wanted to find bait. Getting it in bulk quantities isn't easy to do. It's a thing. Bear bait is a thing. And it's a very tight knit group of people that do it and sell it.
Can you tell us anything about it? Because I'm just like, you don't have to.
That's for Aaron. That's proprietary. Come on, man. You can't.
So I would imagine
there's really nothing proprietary about it. It's just cookies and Pop-Tarts and nuts and whatever I can find. It's really not.
Is it really? Is that really what's in it?
That's all it is.
But Kelsey, it's protein, right?
No.
Okay.
Right. It's mostly sugar and carbs.
That's my problem right there, because I thought the carbs and the sugar is only for one part of the year, and then a certain part of the year they want the protein because they would knock my beehives over, and because they're trying to get the larva at the certain time of the year. Like, they're looking for different things at certain times of the year, and when hunting season is open, they're looking for something specific. And Kelsey's the guy that you get it from because he knows exactly what they need.
I think you're giving me way too much credit.
Just take the credit. Take the credit.
There is a little bit of a science to it. I won't say there isn't.
Good.
But ultimately, what it is that there is certain baits that work better than others, based on trial and error. And all of us that sell bear bait pretty much know what that is. That we're putting together, because we're all looking for the same stuff, because it's what works. A lot of it's feedback from the sportsmen. A lot of the sportsmen have their own proprietary concoction that they like and they want. I just happen to be the individual that can get my hands on it in large enough quantities to do that. When I do put bags of it together for the stores, that is my mix. I do put that mix together. And it's based on what I've found works pretty good. And again, it's just experience in baiting and doing that sort of thing. I try to mix it up so that it's kind of a healthy blend. It's not all sugar. There is some nuts and proteins and stuff like that in there. So ultimately, you got to kind of think of bear baiting as, feeding human beings. Every bear's got their own preference, things that they like, they don't like. Generally speaking, sweets work really well, across the board. Big males, especially in the fall of the year, might go for a protein base, deer meat, things of that nature. Once it gets rancid, though, they tend to shy away from it. They don't really want it, rancid, rotten meat and things of that nature. That's not to say they won't, but they go for what's easy. One little thing to keep in mind, whenever, and it goes for all wildlife species, really, whenever a natural food source is available, it doesn't matter what you put out there for them, they're not going to eat it. Bears, deer, moose, elk, they go for what's natural. They like the natural foods. They know how to regulate their diets 100 times better than humans ever possibly could. That's why you really don't see overweight wildlife. Okay.
Right.
They regulate their own diets. Whatever we give them is supplemental. So, this past year we had a really good acorn crop, and sportsmen had a really difficult time getting bears on bait and staying on bait. If you go to Minnesota and Wisconsin or any other state that baits, if they have a really good berry season, forget it. The harvest rate drops dramatically because bears will eat the natural foods long before they'll eat the fake food, the human foods. And the reason for that is really energetics mostly. Think of it like this, are you going to, if you have food readily available right in your refrigerator, odds are you're going to go there to get food rather than go to the grocery store 10 miles down the road and take time and energy and more money to get food, right? You're going to grab what's easiest, what's close by. Same thing with wildlife. They don't want to expend that energy, that time, that effort if they only have to travel 5 feet to get an acorn or a berry or, whatever the case may be. It's only when they don't have food intake that they're going to go looking for more food and focus on that other food. As a general rule, that's kind of how it works. If you look at, you can actually document, and we've done that quite a bit. You can document exactly when the blueberries ripen in the state of New Jersey. When they start to ripen, the bears disappear. You don't get phone calls.
Blueberry bear right here. I'm holding up a skull of the bear I killed probably about 10 years ago, upstate New York, or a blueberry patch. Blueberries right here.
Yeah. If there's blueberries available, as soon as they come into season and they're there, the number of complaints plummet. They're completely out of the neighborhoods. They're in the berry patches. They're eating the berries. Same thing if it's a really good acorn crop. The minute the acorns come out, or the corn, unfortunately, farmers aren't real appreciative of that. But as soon as the corn gets into the milk stage, you see the complaints drop because they're no longer eating bird seed. They're not into the garbage cans. They're focusing on natural foods. It's just exactly how it works. So if there's a bad mast year, where there's not a lot of nuts out there, that's when you can really capitalize on bears. They'll just be all over the place, putting food out there for them. So that's kind of the logic behind it. And
it's fascinating.
Works good.
Yeah, Kelsey, thank you for that. That's super good for our listeners. We've got a lot of different listeners, big game hunters, falconers, all kinds of different people that listen. So thank you for that.
Sure.
Aaron, do you have any more questions? Because I have one last question before we let Kelsey go.
No, that's it for me.
Okay. That kid that was killed probably during your time, I'm talking the college student.
Yep.
Were you in 2014? Yes. Were you involved with that?
Yes, I was.
Okay. Do you want to recap it, or do you want me to recap it? And if I recap it, it's probably going to be complete. I heard they were drunk. I heard that they saw a bear. They all ran. The one kid he didn't run fast enough. And the bear killed him and then basically ate him and then defended his carcass. That's what I heard.
There's some truth there.
Okay.
What happened was basically a perfect storm of everything going wrong.
Right.
Okay. Had these poor kids done any one thing differently, they wouldn't have had the issue they had. Basically what happened was, they were going for a hike. They were inexperienced hikers. The one kid that got killed had never been in the woods before, ever in his life. This was literally his first hike ever. Him and his brother and a couple of friends, they went up into West Milford, to the location for the hike. They were going down the trail. They were met by some hikers who basically told them there was a bear acting very odd. It was chasing them, and that, these kids, they were warned that they should turn around and take off and leave, with these other people that were coming out of the woods. They didn't. They opted to go down the trail towards where the folks had said the bear was going to be. They found the bear. Basically they saw the bear coming down the pike. They stood there and started taking pictures. And they took a whole bunch of pictures as the bear just kept getting closer and closer and closer and closer. At one point, I'm not exactly sure, what prompted them to finally start getting nervous, but they finally, realized that they overstayed their welcome. They turned and took off running down the path. The bear started, chase after them. Unfortunately, the kid that got killed never tied his shoes that morning. So his shoes were completely untied. His shoes came off. He stopped, grabbed his shoes. Had he told his friends to stay and make noise, do anything, they would have been fine. Instead, he told them to go on, waved them off, said, "I'll catch up with you. Don't worry about it." He ran over, he climbed up on a small little rock. It was a very, very small rock. He climbed up onto that rock to put his shoes on, at which point in time the bear, found him. Bear started circling him. You could literally see where the bear, pounded the brush and plant life around that rock down, because the bear had been there, basically pacing around the rock, keeping him on the rock. We figured he at some point decided to make a run for it after he got his shoes on. He jumped down off the rock again. Had he gone to the trail and took off down the trail, probably would have been fine. But instead, he decided to run into the woods and ran into catbrier. Got tangled up in the catbrier. He literally was disrobed trying to get through the catbrier, through the raspberry bushes. Climbed up underneath a rose bush, a wild rose bush. That's where basically the bear started swatting at him, picking him apart a little bit. Ultimately, what happened was the bear grabbed him by the back of the neck, snapped his neck, and cut his jugular.
Oh my God.
And that's how he died. The bear then drug him out of that patch. He was being eaten. One of the West Milford police officers showed up. He made a really good shot, as the bear was standing over top the body. Killed the bear with one shot. Everything went really, thank goodness the kid did that, because that ultimately, I think, kept every bear in the state of New Jersey from getting shot, later on.
Kelsey, sorry to interrupt you, but keeping every bear in the state of New Jersey from getting shot, meaning if other bears fed off of the carcass, it could have been a problem. Is that what you're saying, or something else?
No, if had he not shot that bear, everybody would have been afraid that the bear that was still on the loose, and probably folks would have been over hyper on that situation and probably started killing any bear that acted funny or got too close. They would have just started shooting them. And then you just got bullets flying in neighborhoods all over the place. Just mass hysteria kind of. Thankfully, we didn't experience that. Because that sort of thing has happened before, not here, but in other places. And then we, basically, I'm not sure how much more you want to know, but ultimately, what we ended up doing is we, the body was taken to the morgue. The human was taken to the morgue. I had to go down and verify that it was a bear attack that killed him. We took the bear to be necropsied and to be tested. The bear was not sick. That bear did not have rabies or distemper or any disease whatsoever. Perfectly healthy. We did pull human remains out of the stomach of the bear. So we know, to answer all those crazy questions, that this was all a hoax and all that sort of thing. But yeah, it was a horrible event. And unfortunately, an even bigger tragedy to that situation was the brother who left his other brother behind. They left his brother behind. Literally, if he'd done any one thing differently, this whole thing wouldn't have happened. It was a perfect storm of miscues, and unfortunately, we had an animal that was predatory. It does happen. It's rare. I don't want anyone to think this is something that's going to happen on a regular basis, but it's a possibility. We have far more coyotes attacking people. We actually have more people injured by white-tailed deer a year than we do bears. But it was a tragic situation that did happen.
It sounds like that bear wasn't super motivated to kill and eat the guy. It sounds like the bear had tons of opportunities to do it and was kind of half-heartedly chasing him.
Aaron has low testosterone, so we're trying to get him. We're trying to get him in a clinic to get his test levels checked. That bear. When you say
the guy like had this guy had all this opportunity to run, and I would think the bear could catch him in like 0.5 seconds, right?
Sure.
So it sounds like the bear was just kind of half-ass chasing him.
You know, the only guy that can answer that isn't around to answer that question. You know, if you some bears, I mean, if you look at bears that kill livestock, you know, they don't. It's not always like you think it is, or it's a really fast, quick concept. You know, sometimes maybe
it was just slowly stalking him around. Then I guess, yeah. I mean,
it may have been, a situation where, you know, the guy just kept doing stupid, dumb things. Essentially, the bear just started. That's possible too. I don't know, but you know, I don't want to.
We have all seen bears run up the side of a mountain and climb trees, so you know it
can happen. Yeah, but I've also seen bears that, you know, take their good sweet time killing some livestock too. You know, eventually they do it in and they eat it too. So I mean,
I don't know what that has to do with my low T.
Because you're making excuses for the bear that just killed a poor college student going on his first hike in West Milford. I drive through West Milford every single day of my life, and there's bears everywhere there. Yeah, no, thank you, Kelsey, for clarifying that, because that story has been going around forever about that kid that was killed and how unfortunate it was. And now I just, from a bear biologist, and this is the last like series of questions, and then we'll let you get out of here. But any reason why you think that bear did that, or just the individual bear and his mood? He was harassed. He was just had enough. He's just like, what do you think?
Typically the bears that are predatory and that kill people are generally subadult or young adult males weighing around 300 pounds, and that's exactly what.
Okay.
What were his T levels?
I don't know what his T levels were. There might be that out there. I don't know, but I don't
definitely 1,100, 1,500. Definitely. That bear was juiced, bro.
Yeah, he wasn't. I don't think he was. I don't think he was juiced. But in the long and the short of the situation was, you know, other states have had predatory attacks. It just is something that happens.
Yeah,
you just get an animal that's into it. I've released bears after catching them. You know, when we, you know, reversibly condition them or something of that nature. I remember having one on Whittingham Wildlife Management Area that I honestly, he gave me the creeps.
Really?
Had I had a shotgun in my hand at the time, I probably would have shot it.
Really?
Just based on the way that animal came out of the cage, turned around and looked at me, and he just gave me there was just something different about that animal.
Wow.
You know, I don't know. You know, I was fine. I was up on top of the truck. But there was just a vibe with that animal, and I've handled literally thousands of bears. And that one is the one that sticks out in my mind as being one that I didn't expect it. You know, the animal was tranquilized. It was fine. Everything went well. I just opened up the door, and he was awake, and he was acting really bizarre.
So he came out of the cage. He turned around. He looked at you like zero fear, just like
like he was going to jump up on the truck and try to grab me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I got that was the internal feeling I had. You know, when I opened up the door, one of those things where I really wished I had the shotgun with me at the time. You know, and I definitely would have given him a load of rubber buckshot for sure to educate him and send him on his way and instill some more fear into him. But again, I think it's important for people to understand we're dealing with wild animals. Anything can happen with wild animals. I don't care if it's a raccoon. I don't care if it's a deer. I don't care if it's a mouse. You know, they're unpredictable.
Yeah.
You know, and if you're going to be out in the woods, you got to kind of keep an eye on things, because literally anything can happen. It really is. Not trying to make anyone scared.
Yeah.
But you got to be wood wise.
Yeah, I mean,
you got to understand what you're up against.
I mean, Kelsey, you're on a podcast that's number one, it's devoted to falconry, and then devoted to everything else. And any one of the listeners has dealt with one red-tail hawk that completely tames down and just phases right into falconry, no problem. And then others that just will not come. There's complete separate personalities within. I mean, it's just a red-tailed hawk. You're talking about an animal that's, completely different, more brain capacity. So the idea that one would just have this thing inside of it, or whatever the case may be, it's genetic makeup to just want to kill somebody. I mean, it just makes perfect sense that could be a possibility. We're dealing with predators.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you, Kel. I needed to clarify that, and I was hoping that you were involved with that in some way. So, and not to speak, we're not making light of the situation. Somebody died, but that has been something that you're at Ramsey Outdoor Store on Route 17. I mean, you're talking to guys. I mean, it's all over the place, in our area, talking about that. It's still brought up to this day of that kid getting killed. You know what I mean? So I just thank you for clarifying that.
There's folks that are out there that still think we released coyotes into the state of New Jersey.
Come on.
They're not.
No.
I mean, these animals repatriated all on their own. Turkeys, yes. Rough grouse, yes. Those animals were reintroduced. There's records of that, pictures of that, and the whole 9 yards. But to convince folks of that is tough.
Yeah.
And it's like, like when we had to change the minds of sportsmen, in the general public about bear hunting and whatnot, changing people's perceptions of wildlife or their ideas are very, very difficult. And it takes a long time to get past some of that stuff. So it's good. It's good to talk about it. It is, so folks know the truth. Yeah, for sure.
Kelsey, what can people do? Like, I remember you mentioned earlier in the conversation about like Sportsman Alliance and stuff for Jersey. What can hunters in Jersey do to help try to I mean, there's a bear hunt. It looks likely that there's going to be one next year. What are some things that people can do to continue that trajectory, that everything's going to work out and continue in the direction it's going?
Being involved with a Sportsman's Federation is probably one of the easiest and biggest things that they can do. Be supportive, go to some of the meetings, go to a council meeting, or, just be involved with, getting on the Fish and Game website and reading what's taking place. We got I believe there's a trout management meeting or fisheries meeting coming up. Folks that are interested in that, they need to go to these meetings and let their voices be heard.
Okay.
Even just writing letters, they don't realize, letters do get looked at. They're always read. They're taken into consideration. I would recommend writing the letter, directly to the Fish and Game Council.
Fish and Game Council. Okay, great.
Right to the Fish and Game Council. The address is in the.
They'll find it. I'm sure they'll.
Right. It's on the website, but it's also in the compendium. That's the word I was looking for.
Okay.
Just be vocal. They can't make changes unless folks tell them what they want and what the changes, are. And you guys, the sportsmen, are paying for it. So you have a right to have your voices heard and make changes.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay. That's great information, Kelsey. We thank you so much for your time. We really do.
Sure. Glad to be on. Enjoy. And I'm so glad to reconnect with you. I'm glad to see you're still doing falconry. That's awesome. Say hi to your mom and brother and everyone.
Mama Sue. Yeah. Mama Sue she'll be listening into this episode. Yeah, I will, Kelsey, and thank you. And I wish
I can ever help again. Let me know. Be glad to help any way I can.
Yeah, no, we appreciate your time 100%. 100%. Thank you so much for being here.